The story begins with the fact that in Japan, life flourished in the Senko organization, where separate living quarters are located. However, even now this life is destroyed by a huge explosion, destroying all life around. The blonde looked at the rising black smoke and raised his thumb up. He and his team killed 312 people, after which the others joined in, shouting that they too had finished their work. Someone started shouting that people were hiding to spare them and were shocked that they were not noticed. The team was unhappy, and meanwhile a girl's voice was heard from behind them. She was here for half a day, but many people don't know about it. The girl called them excellent, since they killed so many. 2 girls from the team began to move the blonde forward. The second guy on the team was shocked. How did she appear right in front of them? However, she was already behind him. The girl was holding a grenade in her hand. She said that the reason was that they were too stupid. Everyone screamed, looking at the stranger in horror and running as far away from her as possible. She began throwing grenades all over the ground, trying to undermine the team. Since they killed as many as 312 people, they deserved a reward. Everything exploded, and the team ran further and further, screaming and screaming, asking for mercy. The stranger said that if she didn't teach them a lesson, they would never know what it was like to let their guard down. After which the girl turned around at the sound of the flashing lights. The police have just arrived. The girl decided to teach them a lesson and shouted at them to train more. After these words, she took out a grenade launcher. She told the kids to take care of themselves and leave everything to her. Then she pulled the trigger. She fired. The recoil from such a weapon was quite strong, but it did not shake. The police cars began to be torn apart along with the people, and the girl calmly dropped the weapon from her hands. After it turned, there was a huge amount of smoke and fire behind it. The cars continued to explode. However, the girl did not react to this. The fire behind her flared up more and more, but suddenly something disturbed her. The head looked down and saw a hand grenade. A second after discovery, it exploded. As the day progressed, the smoke slowly began to dissipate and disappear altogether. The girl must have died. How did she, the leader of a group of mercenaries, die so shamefully from a grenade? The girl had to raise those kids, because otherwise they would have continued to act thoughtlessly. She thought about how embarrassing it was, and then she saw strange rose petals. Then she saw a huge white portal. Are there even flowers in hell? Although it's not that important, she needs to find out exactly where they're coming from. The girl woke up on the floor in a room unknown to her. The bright sun was shining into her eyes. She stood up and sat on her knees, starting to look around. The place seemed strange. There was a lot of broken furniture around. The floor was dirty and ugly. Where is she located? Immediately after that, she ran to the exit, opening the door. How did she even end up here? Looking into the yard, she ran to the golden plate, and when she saw herself, she was shocked. In the reflection the girl saw not herself, but some stranger. Is she traveling through time? A lot of thoughts immediately poured into my head. For example, who is she? And is it possible to go back? Suddenly, due to the sudden movement, my hand began to tingle unpleasantly and ache with pain. Having exposed it, she saw the scars from the whip. Memories of how she was brutally beaten in that room immediately appeared in her head. She lay on the floor, writhing in pain, and an unfamiliar girl hovered over her and said that she had no one to beat except her. The stranger said that she got to her on her own, especially since even her own father doesn't want to have such a daughter. The girl remembered that she was born in paradise in heaven as the admiring daughter of Muru Lu Yu. Lu Yu's mother has disappeared, and her father does not accept her. Everyone ignores her existence. She was thrown into the yard, left to die, and Miroki had a nervous breakdown. She stood up confidently. Often, her anger often worked against her. Muru was tortured to death. This cannot be done. She was given a second chance, given this life, and she will do anything to avenge Lu Yu. When Lu Yu's mother left her, she said that she would return after her 18th birthday. That day the peach trees were in full bloom. Unfortunately, Muru will no longer live to see her 18th birthday because she is already dead. Lu Yu is dead because of her family's fault for being too cruel to this sweet lady. However, despite all this, instead of that girl, she continues to live this life. Of course, the most dangerous leader of a group of mercenaries called Dragons of the 21st century. Unfortunately, a most unfortunate mistake brought her into Lu Yu's Muroi body, but she feels that there are two people in their world that Lu Yu hates with all her heart. Leaving the room, she breathed in the pleasant air. Apparently it was cleaner in ancient times. Suddenly, Muru heard someone at the gate talking about the 60th anniversary of the Muru family grandfather. After which Miroki's sister appeared in the courtyard. She asked if she had ever thought that by going out into the world she might disgrace the whole family with her ugliness. Several servants accompanied her, saying that she was being given too much honor and was not satisfied with it. Lu Yu tried to remember who Miroki is to her and she succeeded. This is her, the little sister who has been bullying Lu Yu almost all her life. This is what led to her death. She won't get away with this, she will avenge poor Lu Yu. She rolled up her sleeves, revealing her scars. She wanted to make Miroki suffer for the innocent blood shed. The girl looked at her sister haughtily, giggling slightly. This made her angry and she screamed, asking what kind of disrespect this was. She swung her whip, saying that she would force Lu Yu to obey her. The servants encouraged their mistress while you dared her sister to beat her to death. Does Miroki really think that she is still the sweet Muru Lu Yu like before? The sister got a little angry, because all attempts to scare were even, and then she swung her whip and said that since she was asking, she would kill her. Lu Yu didn't move while Miroki screamed for this servant's daughter to die. The servants shouted approving comments, saying what a great job Ms. Muru was. However, then the comments died down, and all the servants looked at Lu Yu in slight shock. Noticing this, Miroki looked forward and cold sweat started running down her back. Younger Muru held the other end of the whip in her hand and arrogantly asked if she really calls herself the whip of a 100-year-old god, having such skills? The girl looked at her and was shocked. How could this happen? Lu Yu had never had any fighting skills. After which the younger Muru pulled the weapon towards herself and snatched it from the hands of the eldest, causing her to be amazed. You took the handle of the whip, waving it. She asked Miroki if she still wanted to talk about any rules. She was slightly shaken, but she screamed, asking how she dared to tell her this with such an ugly face. Lu Yu exhaled, saying, "It's true." Then why doesn't she teach her little sister how to use a whip properly? The young lady swung it and Miroki could have sworn that instead of a whip she saw a huge red snake. The blow hit the girl from her leg all over her torso straight to her face. She screamed in pain. The young lady was thrown straight into the fence wall, making a dent with her body. All her servants were in complete shock. The girl's clothes tore where the whip hit, and she fell, leaving a bloody trail on the wall. Four guys ran up to her, concerned about the girl's condition. They wanted to inform the elder. However, Lu Yu shouted for them to shut up immediately, and the servants obeyed. Coming closer, she giggled. Miroki had suffered enough today. Little sister's face will definitely be marred by a scar. Now not only the youngest Muru will be ugly. The girl cried and Yu was surprised, because it was not fatal. Unlike the previous beatings of Lu Yu, out of anger, she stepped on the elder's feet. Miroki jumped up in pain, screaming, "Oh!" The youngest made her regret that she was even born. Afterwards, Lu Yu stood up and said that she makes the rules in her territory. The four men dragged Miroki as far away from this lady as possible so that she wouldn't break something else for her. Throwing away the whip, she walked onto the porch. Her strength is not enough, otherwise that blow would have broken 4 ribs. However, it turned out to be 3 and this is unacceptable. The younger Muru's body needs more training. Lu Yu decided that since she was so weak, she should hide for a while. Suddenly, a voice came from behind her, asking if she was really planning to run away. The girl turned around sharply. It was a white-haired guy. He is as beautiful as a maiden and sweet. How long has he been following her? He is not from the Muru family. There is no such thing in the memories. She replied that this should not concern the guy. However, the guy said that he would decide for himself whether this concerns him or not at all. He blocked her path, asking where she was rushing. It's too late for her to escape because the Muru family is already here. Lu Yu turned towards the gate. The stranger was telling the truth, because a group of people were indeed approaching. He said that there were 45 in total. The girl looked at him in shock, because she had only heard 37 people, which means he was good. The Muru family members are indeed fast, as they have already approached the entrance. The boy looked at the lady with interest while she focused on the gate, gathering all her strength for the battle. A small army approached the entrance, raising a huge amount of dust. Someone shouted asking if Lu Yu dared to do this. The stranger was interested in her further actions, but the girl interrupted him and threw her things in his face, grabbing her sword. She quickly took it out of the case. The guy grinned, continuing to watch her. She prepared for battle, placing a sword in front of her and confidently awaiting the first attack. A huge number of men appeared in front of her, shouting that the girl was a murderer and a pig. Lu Yu turned to the guy, telling him to lend her his sword, because she couldn't fall face down in the dirt. The stranger got here really quickly, and that's good, because now she can focus on revenge on a bunch of corpses. The mother of Muru Chiu or Miroki Du Yunru, then her father Muru Jan and the father of Lu Yu herself, Muru Yi. She looked decisively at everyone. There are no innocent people here in the death of a real girl. She asked, who is the pig here? She has the same ancestors as them. Muru Kan looked at Yi. The girl is trying to create a rift between them and her father. Jan said that since the girl tried to kill a member of her family, it means she is no longer their family. His wife supported the speech, saying that in this case she is no different from an animal. Du Yunru began her speech by saying that her daughter had never offended Lu Yu, but the young lady interrupted her and asked again. She, Muru Lu Yu, lived in this house from the age of 8 and never left it. Then where and how could the girl hurt her sister? However, Kan still said that Muru Chiu often came over because she sympathized with her seclusion, and she heartlessly beat her. Lu Yu said, okay, she has a sword, and the girl's wounds were inflicted with a whip, which she doesn't have here, and even if there was, why would she need him to beat up Miroki? After these words, the girl tore her sleeves to show the beating from Muru Chiu. Having exposed her ugly scars to all 45 people, she wanted justice. She shouted that she was not easily intimidated and that after severe beatings she would not obey. Today's Lu Yu will not remain silent if she is treated unfairly. At this time, Muru Yi coughed slightly. He approached Jan and Yunru, saying that she was right. However, the wife immediately began to deny it, saying that she remembered how her girl decided to go to her for a duel. Du Yunru said that injuries in competitions are common, and Muru Kan supported her. The woman was shocked that Lu Yu was making a fuss, and then the girl asked why they called so many people in this case. Someone said that they couldn't blame the girl, because she might not have controlled the power. The girl's father appreciated how she knew how to stand up for herself. Suddenly, someone from the crowd said that Lu Yu was right and all this was according to heavenly laws. Elder brother Chun Shui arrived to greet his little sister. The girl did not understand who it was, and the guy from the house explained to her that this was the eldest son of her fifth uncle, Zan. The blonde also told her to be careful, because he is quite strong. Lu Yu displeasedly urged him to remain silent, because he was giving himself away too much. He said with a smile that he was doing her a favor, and anyway, where are her manners? Chun Shui bowed before his father, mother and uncle. They also greeted him. After that, Shui bowed to his sister, saying that he had come to teach her some lessons and asked if a 3-step head start would be normal. The girl jerked the sword out of the wooden floor of the porch, already anticipating the battle. The girl said that her left hand alone would be enough against him, and he was amazed that she was left-handed. Lu Yu extended her left hand with the sword and said that giving her a head start would be his biggest mistake. Chun Shui was offended that he was looked down upon so much. Fifth aunt smiled because the youngest Muru was playing with death itself. Third brother can't stop it. The girl glanced somewhere behind her before turning to her older brother, after which she made Shui confused, calling him to her and asking him to show everything he was capable of. After these words, Chun Shui told the girl not to complain after the battle and attacked. Lu Yu did not move from her place as he approached her, causing everyone to gasp. People thought she was frozen with fear, but later she simply leaned forward, sticking out her sword. Then Shui thought that the girl wanted to die with him, but at that very second she disappeared. The guy was at a loss, almost screaming in hysterics, not understanding where the girl had gone. Suddenly she appeared at his side, pressing her sword to his throat. She managed to take Shui by surprise. He trembled when Lu Yu said that he lost, calling the guy a blockhead. The moment Lu Yu said that he had lost, Chong Shui trembled in fear. The entire crowd in front of them was shocked as the girl only used one single move to defeat him. Someone began to demonstratively clap their hands, admiring such an easy and quick battle. It turned out to be the crown prince, accompanied by his grandfather, who urged Lu Yu to lower his sword. The girl decided to test her grandfather's patience and ask what would happen if she didn't let him down. The old man was about to start swearing at the lady, but he was interrupted by Chen Shui's shout. The man was unhappy, because he should not involve him in a battle to the death. After this, Shui fell unconscious and began to foam at the mouth. Younger Muru just called him a coward. A few minutes later, the crown prince approached her and the girl took her leave. Thoth said that it was quite coincidental for the Muru family to have a girl who was superior to the youth. A white-haired guy came out of the house and said that he was glad that the girl did not fall face down in the mud in front of the king. Everyone was immediately amazed and called him King Wing. And it so happened that the third King Wing himself was watching the girl. He greeted the crown prince. The girl thanked the guy and wanted to return the sword, so, it seems his name was Xian Yuan Che. However, Che did not accept the weapon back, telling the girl to take it for herself. She held the sword blade down as she watched him leave with the crown prince and servants. What is he going to do? In the country of Tianshui, women can go to the battlefield and be treated with respect. A group of servants knocked on Lu Yu's room, saying that they had an important matter. Most likely they will not leave again. The crown prince read the decree of heaven, which stated that the Muru army now had Lu Yu to bear the title of princess. He continued, saying that she would also have a marriage with Yi Wang Che. The girl bowed with everyone and listened to the speech. How is this marriage? She didn't sign up for this. Someone told Muru's grandfather that Lu Yu was actually only 13, but he said that this was not a problem since Wang Che agreed to marry and wait until her 18th birthday. The girl, meanwhile, listened to their conversation, from which she realized that it was Yi Wang who proposed marriage. After this, her father and the servants approached her, saying that she had received a letter from the prince. It was said that the girl would not let him sneak her away. Lu Yu thought about it. He really influenced her intentions, knowing that Muru would not be able to stop her. In this case, the girl will go and greet him personally in May, at the same time, take the lives of his dogs. Already closer to night, the future princess stood near the huge tower, waiting. When everything was already clear, she threw her long hook to the top. No matter how many guards there is no place where they will not end up. It was at that moment that the girl made her way onto the tower. The guards turned away and the girl managed to slip through. And only after hearing a strange sound and turning around, the guard found no one. Meanwhile, Yi Wang was relaxing in his private solarium, enjoying the night. He lay in a bath with red rose petals, breathing steadily and calmly. There were pillows under his head and arms, which made it possible not to worry about discomfort and to relax. When Che heard the sound of walking, he opened his eyes and said that he really couldn't think of the girl lightly. The guy directed his gaze at Li Yu's silhouette, asking if she really missed her so much that she came in the dead of night. The girl said that he was right, because she really came to see him and threw his own sword straight into his chest. However, she came for a reason, but to take his life. After these words, the young man grinned. As soon as the youngest Muru sent the sword towards the prince, she took out a dagger. At that very second, the girl went after the dagger, screaming for Yi Wang to accept his death. The guy threw the sword away from him with a joyful smile, saying that he would still play with his wife. Flying towards the prince, the girl told him to enjoy as much as he wanted, but the game would end quickly. She wanted to cut that throat, but her future husband flew back, telling her not to worry. The girl appreciated his quick movements, but she was not inexperienced either, and therefore she turned around sharply and cut off a lock of the guy's hair. Looking at the flying hair, Yi Wang smiled. Looks like this is going to be a fun night. At that same second, Lu Yu flew towards him with a dagger, focused on the matter at hand. Che noticed the trajectory of the girl's hand and flew to the side with a quick stream of light. From somewhere he took out a towel and jumped out from behind the girl. He didn't think Yu's methods were so skillful. The guy started dancing in the air, wrapping a towel around him. The girl could not even think that Qin Gong really existed. Slightly distracted, Lu Yu did not notice how a towel was completely wrapped around her waist. Wang pulled it towards him with a smile. The princess jumped into the air in time, forbidding herself to play by the rules of the third prince. While flying, the girl stuck her dagger forward to finally finish what she started, but her future husband knocked it out of his hands in one motion. After that, the young lady began to fall, and the guy grabbed her by the waist, falling after her. They fell like a bomb into the water and Lu Yu surfaced almost immediately. The prince took her under the armpits, saying that she would never let him stop worrying. Being in the same position, the girl put something to his chest and asked how he felt now. Is he enjoying himself? The girl had a crossbow on her left hand, and she put an arrow to Che's chest, asking if he was enjoying the game. The third prince smiled, saying that he was starting to like Lu Yu more and more. He extended his hand to her shoulder, and the girl made the guy's chest bleed. He took a rose petal from the young lady's shoulder. She said that he could continue to love her. Holding a petal on his index finger, he smiled and said that in that case it was wonderful. However, the girl continued, saying that she didn't like him. Wang should not try to win her, because she has no time for games. Holding the arrow still at his chest, she swung her right hand, intending to knock out the prince. However, suddenly something went wrong, and the princess looked away for a couple of seconds. This was enough for Che to spin and fall into the water, slipping out of the maiden's hands. Lu Yu was dissatisfied, because this body of a 13-year-old girl limited her strength. Wang scolded the girl, saying that the arrow was very sharp. Right now, you cannot become his opponent. They were surrounded by a huge amount of energy, forming two rings. It seemed like it was the guy's inner energy. The girl looked at Wang angrily and seriously, slightly worried. He really has enough skills. Lu Yu looked at her future husband, realizing that her body had only 1/10 of her total power. Unexpectedly, he asked about the wounds from the whip. Che said that in the future he would be her supporter, and she was slightly surprised by such a statement. The guy closed the distance between them, saying that after this anyone who offends her will suffer greatly. Barely noticeable sweat appeared on the girl's face. No one had ever dared to say such words to her. In the end, she decided to leave the guy and let him live. To Wang's statement, she replied that she had no intention of being offended anyway. The young man said that she did not need to make excuses, and from today she would become his man. If she has problems, she knows where to look for him. Lu Yu was amazed at Che's great desire to still be with her in a future marriage. He looked down on her due to the difference in height. That's right, they should be together because they are very similar, both are lone wolves. The younger Miru said that since she was one of his people, then he was one of hers. Che smiled, saying that it was true, because he would very soon become her husband. She took him by the cheek and squeezed him lightly, saying that in this case he should not give her away, otherwise he would pay a lot. Wang said that he understood everything, and then began to scream, because she squeezed his cheek tightly. Finally the day came. Che and Lu Yu separated like ships at sea last night, keeping silent about what happened then. Young Princess Miru was currently in the residence, and a loud crash sounded in the courtyard. Her guard was watching her, and he was amazed how the girl in an instant turned a huge cobblestone into a pile of stones. Lu Yu waved her dagger, happy to have her hand restored. Her guard was in shock and did not understand whether he would protect her or everything would be the other way around. Later, one of the servants ran up to them, very worried. The man wanted to tell him not to scare the princess, but she was already asking the reason for such excitement. The boy said that today the 2nd, 5th and 7th princes heard about the princess and asked her to appear at the banquet, betting on luck. The princes had already lost 2 estates that should have been given to their subordinates. The girl smiled and said that she should look at it. The young lady headed to the general flower pavilion or brothel of the Tianshui country. The 3 princes argued, placing bets and discussing each other's wealth, because it is obvious that the 3rd brother is richer than the eldest. They continued to argue about their wealth and were about to place new bets. However, before they opened their boxes of cubes, Wang heard a familiar voice. Lu Yu walked into the room, saying that she herself would help open the playing cubes for her betrothed. Wang didn't object and didn't even say that she should open it. Of course, the 7th brother was dissatisfied. On what basis should this lady open? However, his brother was pulled back by the 5th, saying that she would very soon be their 3rd sister. Approaching the first man, she opened the dice. One was with the number 6, and the other 2 were with the numbers 5. The young lady then walked over to another box, looking at it with intrigue. Lifting the lid with their thin fingers, everyone stared at the bones. The men cried out in shock. This time there were 2 dice with the number 6 and 1 with the number 5. The first old man watched as the young princess's gaze changed from cruel to sweet, after which she hung on Che's shoulder and asked how he played this game. The 5th and 7th prince explained to Lu Yu how everything worked and wanted to place bets again. The princess looked at the men with interest and said that in this case she would put up a gold leaf. One of the princes thought, he had heard about this princess. She was only 13 years old, and she looked like a child. How could he be afraid of her? Lu Yu asked what she should do next, and her future man told her how to shake properly. She took the box in her hands and did as he said, conjuring the largest number. The princes realized that, nevertheless, this girl understood absolutely nothing about betting. After losing, the young lady clung to the third prince's hand, crying, but he assured her that as long as she liked it, then everything was fine. This calmed her down, and the girl put 2 more sheets. She got a 4, a 5 and a 6, and the 7th prince got 2, 3 and 5. The 7th prince won the sheets and the girl was upset again, but Wang patted her on the head, consoling her. The girl jumped up, saying that since she was doubling the bet, then the 7th prince should too. The third sister turned to the crown prince, saying that he had heard everything. Having returned to her previous appearance, she told Qiu Qi to set the bet amount right here and now. He listed a huge number of possessions. The girl wanted to make the betting game a success, and Lu Yu made a bet condition of 4,470,000 liang. The crown prince turned to the girl, because the bet seemed too big. The young princess leaned on her hands and said that since they were going all in, they should not be afraid of large sums. The 7th prince lowered his head in shame, saying that he did not have such property rights. However, apparently the youngest Muru was not very worried about this. She simply called the servants. He handed him some documents, saying that loans were also welcome. The 5th prince screamed, trying to stop his brother, but he had already signed everything. Lu Yu said that if the prince was already tired, then they could play chess together a little later. He fell silent, and the girl with a smile suggested that they finally start. The 5th one encouraged the 7th prince, because he definitely had to win. All the men in the room held their breath, in anticipation of something terrible. The girl took her box and said that everyone was allowed to shake it. After that, the princess and the 7th prince abruptly placed them on the table, holding the lid with their palm. Then the girl jerked the lid off and she got dice 4, 5 and 6. Everyone looked at the dice in shock, rejoicing at their win and wiping off their sweat. The man repeated after the young princess, also jerking off the lid and shouting that he had won. However, the third sister was in no hurry to get upset, but on the contrary, smiled, saying to look at the bones better. Sweat appeared on his face again. He looked down and saw 3, 5 and 6 and fell backwards. Then she took her cube in her hand and smiled maliciously, rejoicing at her victory. With those little taps, the girl changed the location of the bones, turning them over. And just when the dice reached the desired number, the young lady stopped. Lu Yu said that the 7th prince lost and asked if anyone else wanted to continue playing, but everyone refused. Yi Wang approached his future wife and said that in this case they would leave. Finally, Lu Yu said that if she doesn't receive her debt in 10 days, then ban him somewhere to get it. At this statement, even the crown prince raised his eyebrows, amazed at the impudence. Already riding in the carriage, Wang Che laughed, saying how insidious his future wife was. She said that she cannot allow other people to humiliate her person. Afterwards he asked if she liked his man and the lady gave him a questioning look. Yi Wang said that the girl should definitely have guessed about his man in the brothel. Lu Yu narrowed her eyes and crawled towards Wang Che to show him the girl's threats. She closed the distance between them and did a strange thing, barely touching his lips with hers. After which she closed this distance too, connecting their lips in a short kiss. Then the girl fell on him, more on purpose than because of her clumsiness. Wang Che pushed his bride away in shock, his cheeks turned red and he screamed, asking where she got such things. Lu Yu did not answer, and her future husband became angry, but not seriously, asking for an answer. To describe King Wing Xian Yuan Che, the term genius is often used. However, now the topic has been changed and he lost almost 5 million liang to Muru's wife Lu Yu. Crystal Palace. Lu Yu sat in the courtyard and smeared something on her nails. Her guard looked at this and was amazed. Mix snake venom with leaves, grass and pollen? Will this really be beneficial? The girl said that the benefits were enormous and in her thoughts she was glad that absolutely no one would argue with her, and they would even believe her. After this, a servant approached them, saying that they had sent pearls, and the Empress invited Muru to choose them for herself. The girl raised one eyebrow, saying, "Does she understand correctly that the Empress wants to know who she is?" The Empress gave birth to a prince, and the royal concubine Che. Behind the Empress is one of the prime ministers, behind the concubine is the first. They stood on equal footing. Li Yu thought that concubine Che's son was quite famous. Her thoughts were interrupted by the servant, saying that the girl had better wait for her highness, but she had already left. Muru walked into Muren's main residence, where she was immediately greeted very loudly. The Empress was sitting at the end of the hall on a sofa, and next to her stood the royal concubine. She told Li Yu not to be shy to come in. The Empress's name was Li Yu, and the royal concubine's name was Chen. Muru bowed before them and introduced herself. The concubine recognized the name and asked the girl to come to her. A crowd of girls gasped in shock, shouting about how ugly she was, also recognizing her. The royal concubine called Li Yu again, saying that she would like to examine her. After examining the girl, she said that Yu is not that attractive, but as long as her son likes her, then everything is fine. After this, turning to the Empress, she asked her opinion. The woman agreed, because mediocrity does not mean that a person is bad. Later, she asked what other books Muru reads besides his martial arts. The girl admitted without a drop of shame that she no longer reads anything. Some 2 girls from the crowd gasped. The royal concubine hurried to assure Li Yu that this was normal, because one day she would go to the battlefield with Che and she would be no worse than those who read. Yu realized that she really liked the concubine. At that moment, the Empress called the girl to her and wanted to introduce someone to her. It was the same 2 ladies from the crowd, Lu Hin King and Lu Hin Ai. Empress Li Yu said that they should find a common language and take a walk together sometime. Soon the woman gave a signal and the servants came, bringing out ginseng tea. Li Yu said that only ginseng tea is a worthwhile thing in the land of snow, because it is the best medicine for beauty. Li Yu thanked the woman for the tea and was about to drink it, but the smell involuntarily made the girl worry. The Empress seems to be up to something. Muru glanced at the tea, ginseng, mint and plantain. Individually they are harmless, but together they can be counteracted into poison. Over the course of an hour and a half, guests will gradually get tired, and later, without realizing it, they will die. Lu Hin King approached her, asking why she wasn't drinking. The girl said that everything was fine and drank some tea. Immediately after this, Yi Wang Che arrived at the residence. Empress Li Yu immediately asked why he came to them. The guy replied that he had come to pick up Li Yu because someone from the Murong residence wanted to see her. Wang Che greeted the Empress and took his leave, saying that he was already leaving them. When the young man took Muru's hand, she became slightly more cheerful. He led the girl out of the residence. When they left, Che said that next time she should come to the event with him, otherwise he would not let her go. Even if the girl was listening, Yi Wang didn't see it. She felt bad and fell to the ground. Behind him, the guy heard a roar and turned around to see Li Yu who had fallen. He immediately ran to her. Looking at the girl's body, Che prayed to all existing gods so that she would not allow something terrible to happen to her. After the girl was examined in the infirmary, the guy demanded an answer from the doctor. He shook the herbalist until he said that Muru had 2 types of poisons in his body. Li Yu seemed to have woken up and was already listening to the conversation in the ward. Che shouted at the doctor, asking why he couldn't cure her. He looked slightly frightened at the concubine's son, saying that he could not do anything. The man said that these 2 poisons were very strong and he did not know how to remove them. Yi Wang was very angry. Baring his teeth, he cursed Empress Li Yu with all the curses in the world. After which he turned around and said that he would go to her for the antidote, but Li Yu had already called out to him. The girl stood up and said that she was upset that the guy underestimated her so much. Absolutely all the servants in the room and Chen himself were in shock. The doctor even checked her pulse by touching her wrist. The girl sat down at the round table where Yi Wang was also sitting. Everyone in the room looked at her with the same bewilderment. The girl said that she didn't do anything supernatural, but simply used one poison against another. Che looked at the girl with concern, asking what this meant, and the servant suddenly realized that she had used poison from her nails. At the residence, Lu Hin King asked why the girl did not want to drink tea. Maybe she doesn't like him? However, Li Yu said that everything was fine and took the mug. She inserted her fingernail into the tea, mixing 2 poisons. After which she drank the tea, not at all afraid that he would harm her. This is how she explained her words to Yi Wang. Suddenly Che asked the girl if she thought he was annoying. However, she immediately said no, taking his face in her palm. He looked at her with a tender gaze, and she said that she was really happy next to him. The girl continued to press her hand to his cheek, no one ever worried about her as much as Che did. Lu Yu smiled happily, also looking at her partner with affectionate eyes, after which she began to come closer, greatly reducing the distance between them. Following this, the girl stood on tiptoes and lightly touched his lips with her lips. Because of their height difference it was very difficult. Yi Wang closed his eyes slightly, enjoying the moment. They pulled away from each other too quickly. Muru looked at Che's embarrassed face and thought how naive he was. They continued the conversation. The girl said that she was an eagle who could fly into the sky with him. The guy wanted to say that he would protect her, but she interrupted him, saying that she would not let someone get away with insulting her. For the next month there were no problems, and in return Che brought her and they entered the national treasury. From there they stole two things. The first was consciousness poison number 7, and the second was a forbidden book. Yi Wang was wondering why Lu Yu took these particular things. The girl said that he would find out, but over time. One day Miru asked her guard servant Kuo Hen how he would describe Lu Hin AI. He called her reckless and domineering. Everyone gathered to check the fighters. Archery on horseback is a common demonstration of your skills. Now it was Yi Wang Che's turn to shoot, and having fired exactly 3 arrows from his bow, he hit the target. The guy appreciated his work and was pleased with it. Several people shouted in approval. Lu Hin AI watched all this. Yi Wang was incredible. How did the ugly Lu Yu grab him for herself? The girl ran up to Che, screaming and admiring the guy's skills. He asked her to moderate her ardor. Muru stood nearby with Chiu Chihang. She was amazed that AI thought it was great, because the girl at 10 could do better. Hin AI hung on Che's hand, but the guy said that it was indecent. True, this had no effect on the girl at all. Sister King screamed, she has now shown this side even to the third prince. The girl said that she would not lose to brother Che. The guy said that since she wants to shoot a bow, then let her go. Li Yu took a small stone and snorted, intending to spoil the show slightly. Hin AI climbed onto her horse and was about to shoot, but the young princess threw a pebble right at the horse's feet. Virgo immediately began to go off course and, as a result, was unable to hit the target. She stared blankly at the arrows in the ground, realizing that she had completely screwed up. She looked at Yi Wang awkwardly, shouting that it was the horse's fault and brother should believe her. From Che's gaze she realized that all this time he had not even looked at her. He must have spent his time looking at his beloved future wife. AI decided that she would not tolerate this and screamed, saying that Lu Yu had arranged it all, causing the horse to stumble slightly. Yi Wang looked at the girl angrily, telling her not to talk nonsense, but Lu Hing did not stop saying that he should not be so fascinated by the ugly girl. The girl was surrounded by the crown prince and her sister, asking her to calm down and shut up, but she stuck to her line. Lu Yu interrupted AI's monologue, saying that the emperor allowed them to get married. She shook slightly, but still asked what was in it for her. Her brother and sister immediately tried to shut her up, asking what she was talking about. The crown prince tried to explain that Hin AI was still a child, but the princess did not listen to him. She answered the girl's question, saying that, in fact, all this was very wonderful. After which she called Kuo Hen behind her and they left. The crown prince understood that with her character one should expect trouble. That is why he approached the third brother and asked for an apology again, but he said that he could not calm down Yu. Yi Wang prepared to leave and his highness looked back at AI. She would soon understand what Lu Yu meant. Lu Hing saw this look and was completely shocked. Is that why even this prince looks at her like that? The emperor and the concubine walked in the garden, looking at the peonies that bloomed very beautifully this year. The young princess ran up to them with tears in her eyes. The emperor noticed that the truth was ugly, but who brought her to tears? Running up to the concubine, she said that she was being insulted. After which the girl ran up to the emperor, asking him to take her side, because she wanted to beat the offender. The man thought about who the hell she could beat up. She was so small and cute. He took her side, saying that she could beat her, but not let it be fatal. Lu Yu understood. She thanked the emperor for his decision and went to the residence. Waving her whip, the girl caused a small commotion, frightening the servants. She was accompanied by Kuo Heng and said that anyone who entered the left side of the palace would not be able to leave. The girl warned the servants that anyone who entered the left side of this residence anymore would not leave it. Everyone was angry and in shock, not understanding who this girl was. She walked past them, but they shouted about how dare she just break into the minister's residence. One of the men went to his head Ju Men Ti Du, and meanwhile the second wanted to stop Lu Yu, calling her a dirty girl. She turned around at this and waved her whip, shouting that they were too disrespectful to her. All two that remained flew away in different directions, screaming in complete horror. They hit the pillars and someone, appreciating her abilities, paid her a compliment. It was Mentor Lin. He asked the girl who she was, but she didn't even turn around and walked on. The man got angry and told the girl not to complain later because of the consequences. All the fighters attacked. They attacked the fragile Lu Yu, but she did not cower in fear, but simply walked. The girl was ready for this, and therefore simply grinned maliciously, her eyes lit up. Meanwhile, two men had already entered the residence to demonstrate their arrow-throwing abilities. An acquaintance of his was with Ju Men Ti Du, and he said that someone had come to the residence looking for trouble. After being asked who exactly, the guy replied that it was his younger sister Lu Yu. The old man felt uncomfortable, because the girl was from the first leading family of Tianquan province. The man had a strange premonition, so he turned his horse and said that he was returning. The princess's brother saw several of Muru's troops and realized that his sister was up to something. She will definitely be careful. Hin Ai came out of her room and saw Lu Yu with Kuo Hen. She ran up to them and screamed, asking how she dared to behave so terribly in front of her door. After which her sister Hin King and the crown prince showed up. Everyone stood in shock, looking at the commotion. The princess stood surrounded by aching bodies that were shaking in pain or were unconscious. The king and the crown prince had already realized that the youngest Muru was with the emperor and asked to take her side. Mentor Lin sat leaning against his back and barely audibly said something about one movement. He then continued, saying that Lu Yu only struck once and demolished them all. Hin Ai was horrified. The girl examined all the men. They had one stripe on their necks. How did a 13-year-old girl defeat 10 men with one blow? Lu Yu is even younger than Aya herself, that is, being younger, she had enormous strength. Kuo Hen also understood Lu Hin's confusion. He, too, at first could not imagine the strength of this girl and was glad that he was not her enemy now. After all, if you are her enemy, then most likely your chances of survival will be extremely small. Hin Ai started screaming, saying that she would deal with her. Yu smiled, seemingly happy about this. After that, she swung her whip, tying it around the youngest Lu Hin and pulled her towards herself. The girl was thrown into another wall and she began to scream in pain. The crown prince and Hin King were horrified. After which Ai fell onto the tiled floor. Someone screamed for Lu Yu to be more merciful. She did not answer and waved her whip, handling it well and skillfully. The smile never left her lips. The girl hit her with almost all her strength and everyone was horrified. Hin King almost cried looking at this. The wooden wall nearby was completely broken. The young princess turned around, saying that if Ai was disrespectful again, she would know the consequences. King approached her, asking for mercy for her sister in the future, but she was told that she had no right to ask her for it. The prince slipped away and the eldest Lu Hing felt unsafe. Even the crown prince slipped away, afraid of Lu Yu so much. Who then can save Hin Ai? Finally, Lu Hin King's father showed up. He came up and wanted to make a claim. He said that Miss Moore was flouting the law in broad daylight, blocking the path to his residence and causing a massacre. However, for what reason? The girl, completely unafraid and holding her face, said that this was a punitive expedition. The man told her to continue, because he wanted to hear everything about this expedition. Lu Yu listed everything from contempt for the monarchy to contempt for the princess's ruling monarchy. The father of Hin King and Hin Ai told the girl not to rush, and his residence is not a place that will tolerate insults. The man demanded proof, and the girl said that his daughter Ai had slandered the officially reigning emperor in front of everyone, holding Yi Wang's hand. He was shocked, and Lu Yu continued, saying that she was shouted at in the middle of the street because of her marriage, confirmed by the emperor himself. So contempt for the reigning princess is already the second crime on Hin Ai's record, but the third crime is insulting those of higher rank, that is, the princess. The young lady continued, saying that these were just flowers. However, when she mentioned the emperor, Maiden Ai brushed it off with the words, "So what?" Then she said that since they were not impressed by the provincial emperor Tianquan, then the emperor's words did not count? Whose will be considered then? The prime minister was very offended, and also stood in complete shock at what the girl said. The younger and older Louis Hin were in complete shock. the first in pain, and the second worried about her sister. Jae Kwo-hyun understood how serious all these crimes were, because they were punishable by death. Lu Yu grinned smugly. Since they decided to pull the tiger by the tail, she would bite off their whole hand. Lu Yu asked, could it be that the words spoken by the emperor are not considered? What happens? The decree awarded to her by the emperor is not considered as something. Do only the words that the prime minister says count? The man interrupted her, saying that he was very loyal to the emperor. The minister asked not to slander him, and now the princess was surprised. These words were not only heard by her, but also by Prince Wang and also by Hin King. The prime minister looked at his daughters. Was it all true? What happens now that everyone, including her future husband, will simply stand up against her and say that she slandered him? It seems that the emperor cannot outweigh the opinion of the prime minister. Just because he is respected does not mean that Lu Yu will tolerate such statements addressed to him. Hin Ai said that she just didn't like the way the younger Mura looked. The prime minister was confused and could not come up with anything better than to say that his daughter was a child and it was better not to take her words seriously. He took Ai by the shoulders and brought her to the princess to ask for an apology, but the young lady said that this would not be enough. The girl said that it was better to have an unborn child than to be ignorant to the emperor and the ranks above. The young princess has already received the emperor's approval and they better think of an answer that will satisfy her. After a short pause, she said that otherwise no one would leave this residence again. Lu Yu stayed in the residence until late at night, waiting for her answer. She was even provided with dinner, but she was still very, very bored. Finally going out onto the porch, she said that she had wasted her time and asked what Che was doing now. Kwo Hen replied that he was training the dragoon army. Afterwards, the prime minister came to them with the words that he would personally come and answer for his daughter's words, asking for punishment from the emperor. Several servants brought Lu Hin Ai into the courtyard and forced her to her knees. For one of the crimes, the punishment was 100 strong blows, so the man shouted to the servants to beat the girl, and they began to whip the girl with sticks while she cried bitterly from severe pain. Ai asked to stop, but her father did not pay attention to this and only asked the princess if she was happy. Lu Yu asked the man why he should raise his family this way. As soon as Kwa Ai was hit for the 85th time, the young lady shouted that this was enough for her first offense. The prime minister was shocked that the girl was acting so generously, but thanked her. Lu Yu was delighted, and when the minister was about to go to court, she said that he did not need to go there. After all, falling to your knees is truly humiliating even for him, and then he realized. The girl ran away laughing while Kwo Hyun watched. This lady stayed here overnight and just for this? It seems that the princess's main motive was simply to humiliate the prime minister. Already in the palace, someone burst into loud laughter while listening to the story. The girl was sitting with Yi Wang. He said that she was just something and had gone to extremes today. The young princess said that she had said that she would not allow herself to be offended, but she told Che to be careful. The third prince said that with her actions she changed the whole situation. Their duo will be invincible in the future. Yi Wang said that the people behind him need to be quicker in order to take the first step. Well, they won't rush yet. Suddenly, Lu Yu leaned forward and grabbed the prince's lower lip with her teeth. He pulled her away, calling her a puppy. She laughed, saying that he really knew her very well and looked into his eyes. The young princess then licked his lip. He should not strive to be in the place of the prince, because this could lead to death. Then she took him by the shoulders, allowing him to relax. She wanted Che to let her pave the way for her man to the throne on her own. Lu Yu and Yi Wang were in the training palace with Kwo Hen. The husband introduced the princess to his squad of bloody shadows. She couldn't understand if it was all true. Che looked at the girl and was surprised. He himself personally trained this army and this is her impression? The girl screamed, asking how could they just call themselves fighters of Tianjin province with this? Yi Wang burst out laughing while all the fighters were perplexed, not understanding who was standing in front of them. Che took his bride by the shoulders and said that from today on she is their master. After these words, the warriors began to protest, saying that she was too weak. Yi Wang announced to his warriors that from today on, Lu Yu was their new master. The head of the warriors, showing great respect for the princess, still said that she was not suitable, because she was too weak. Calling her servant, Yang Hu asked for the blush she had just bought. Having smeared a little on her finger, the girl said that they could attack all at once and the warriors were confused. And when they did not attack, the girl immediately told them not to blame her and went first. The head considered her a rather easy opponent, and therefore did not even move when the lady came closer. He grabbed the sword in its case and pointed it at the girl, and she smiled, about to do the trick. The young princess grabbed the end of the sword and moved it to the side, then approached the guy's chest and put the dagger to it. Immediately after, she accelerated, letting go of the head's sword and began attacking others. Kuo Hyun was concerned about the girl's well-being. After a while, Yen-hu screamed, saying that she had closed her eyes. Che watched his bride, realizing that she saw only with her sensations, but it doesn't matter how strong she is, because she's only 13 years old. She fluttered in the air like a moth. In her criminal world, she used to be at the level of a queen, and no matter what kind of massacre it is, she can come and go whenever she wants. Yang Hu and Kwa Hen looked at their mistress in fascination. She really looked like a fluttering butterfly. They watched Lu Yu dance. She seemed to not notice anyone and danced according to the mood. The two men then sat down and began to worship her. Yi Wang told them to stop, because it was strange and very embarrassing. Che shouted that Lu Yu is beautiful because he has good taste, so don't let them embarrass you. Then, hearing a strange sound, they turned around and found a girl cutting a huge stone. She deftly waved her hand with two outstretched fingers and turned her back to the stone. The cobblestone split into several neat pieces with a loud crash. All the fighters, Che and even some of the servants looked at this seemingly fragile maiden with bulging eyes. Even the third prince looked at Lu Yu with wide eyes. She really is truly strong. All the warriors screamed. There was something like blood on them. However, before they panicked, the princess said that it was blush. Even the head was horrified, realizing that this was left on him from the princess. She began her speech, saying that if she were serious, they would have died long ago. After which she asked the men if they still considered her as weak as before. They showed respect by kneeling and calling her a master, but the girl said that it was not the time to call her that yet. In 10 days she will come and check on them. Those who are not suitable will leave. Later, the girl gave her man bulletproof gloves. She used them to break the stone, and Wang shouldn't be stupid next time, trying to repeat everything with his bare hands. The young princess told him not to repeat this again and kissed his bandaged hand. The third prince blushed and said that there were too many things in her head. After some time, Kuo Hen ran up to them, saying that the princes had sent their debt, that they had lost at cards. The girl was shocked by such a quick return, but Che said it was difficult not to be scared. Kuo Hen said that he heard that they went into debt for this. Immediately after Che and Yu saw their wealth, they were visited by mother concubine Yi Wang. She asked how the girl should manage her money. Lu Yu replied that it was not her money, but Che's money. The guy was surprised at first, but then said that he would send them to the national treasury. They stood in silence for some time, but Yen-hu ran up to them with a report. The concubine was told that a letter had been sent to her by pigeon mail. Aoyong country came to celebrate the emperor's birthday. Yi Wang asked who was coming, and Yang said that Prince Du Guyi had arrived from the country. Even the royal concubine was surprised that Prince Du Guyi had arrived. Did the tiger bow before the jackal? Very strange indeed. Mother asked, why doesn't a left-wing prime minister take care of this? Yi Wang agreed, however. Since Prince Du Guyi himself has arrived in person, it is definitely not just to drink tea. The country of Ao Yun is located in the north and borders the country of Tianchen, but comparing them is the same as comparing a tiger and a jackal. Prince Du Guyi was an accepted genius at the age of 10, he changed the country in just 6, and today he arrived at the celebration in honor of the emperor's birthday. Prince Che arrived at his father's palace to congratulate him and say that today his birthday should be celebrated by the whole country. He was lucky enough to receive almost 5 million liang, and he would like to give it to his father. He almost didn't react at all, but the Empress thought about how flattering it was. The Emperor asked if Lu Yu had any questions, but she immediately assured His Highness that everything was fine. They are willing to give as much as they can and Yu fully supports Che. Why would she be unhappy? The man grinned, saying that in that case he was very happy about the gift from his children. The maiden's husband said that this was the 3rd time she had appeared in this way. She wondered why this didn't suit him so much. After which Che asked when she would allow her to see her real self. He wanted this in order to better understand his princess. Lu Yu wanted to answer something, but they were interrupted by the appearance of the prince of the country, Ao Yun. There were a large number of guards and servants around. They carried a small palanquin in which the prince was traveling. Their clothes were black and red with gold accents. They were greeted by the country of Tianchen, whose style was as cold as winter. The crown prince greeted Prince Ao Yun. He, coming out, said that their countries are on fairly friendly relations. And that is precisely why there is no point in being so kind. Watching this, Lu Yu was upset, because even with such a beautiful face, he was a cold block. Yi Wang became angry because he was very jealous of his princess. She just laughed. After which they turned their gaze to the prince, who came out of his portable house. After some time, he turned in their direction. Their eyes crossed with the third prince, and Lu Yu asked if those two were really having some kind of secret affair. Already at the party, the prince invited the emperor to play the flute for him, his favorite musical instrument. The man was amazed at this desire to perform the song, and Lu Yu already realized that they were in for a great show. The prince was allowed to perform the melody and he began to play. Everyone closed their eyes, realizing that the rumors about his skill were true. During the performance, he was quite carried away by the game, or rather, he pretended to be. All the important officials seemed to fall asleep while listening to the melody, but Lu Yu immediately realized that it was hypnotic music. Opening his eyes, Du Guyi noticed the young princess's gaze on him, and then immediately looked to the other side. She was offended that he looked down on her. By that time, Prince Che appreciated the game and said that he would join the guy. The third prince stood up and walked over to the drum-like structure, beginning to beat on it to the beat of Du Guye's melody. The emperor at that moment saw a large number of butterflies in front of him. The empress and concubine appreciated the melody even more, and Lu Yu was dissatisfied, because the two were definitely long-time lovers. Both princes diligently performed their part of the melody, speeding up its rhythm. As a result, the performance seemed to turn into a battle between a dragon and a wolf, that is, their internal energy. One of the guests began to foam at the mouth. The young princess snorted, saying, "Are they serious? First they flirt, but now they want to fight." Looking at Du Gu and Yi Wang from their place, she became angry. They can't treat her like an invisible person. After looking around, the girl saw a zither and took it from some musician and decided to use it, after which she ran her hand along the strings, joining the musical game. At first, Wang Che thought that it might be some kind of phoenix and smiled. It took him a while to realize that Lu Yu was playing. However, it was definitely not a phoenix. Turning towards the young princess, he saw the lust for murder emanating from her. This was something he had never seen before. Continuing to manipulate the strings of the zither, she silently said that he was right. She only had a lust for murder, which manifested itself in the form of purgatory. Du Guyi looked at the girl in amazement, completely not understanding where such a young lady had such a thirst for murder. Prince Che wanted his wife to quickly become Lu Yu, because he did not want her to show herself like that in front of everyone. Lu Yu manipulated the strings of the zither and was gradually consumed by thirst. This lust for killing was too strong. Even Yi Wang understood everything. He shuddered, and barely noticeable drops of sweat appeared on his face. The emperor howled, holding his head and shaking. His head hurt badly. Everyone who was under the influence of this thirst was shaking in pain. Du Gu watched the girl. Country Prince Ao Yun had definitely not seen such strong bloodlust for a long time. Lu Yu's red and glowing eyes looked straight at the dark prince Du Guyi. Much more energy formed around her than before, and the guy even shuddered. La pointed small shards at the prince. Why did this pathetic ant dare to touch her boyfriend? Du Gu began to be surrounded by these streams of thirst, and he began to feel slightly anxious. Immediately after that, Lu Yu's pink and black aura took him into a cocoon, from which small features emerged. The guy was completely horrified. He began to imagine that they had grabbed him and wanted to feed him to a huge creature that had already opened its mouth. He fell, screaming for help from horror and fear, because he didn't want to die at all. The prince's body was seen through, and he sharply opened his eyes, returning to reality. Du Gu gasped, realizing that he had imagined it all, but was still horrified by the hallucination. Lu Yu's bloodlust intensified. The prince looked at the girl and was surprised at such strength. Wang Che was at a loss. Why did his bride have such a strong desire to kill? It was very bad, because strength and thirst swallowed the girl headlong. Che flew up to the girl while the dark prince was still thinking about the reason for the emergence of the power. Yi Wang grabbed Lu Yu and began calling her name. trying to bring her to her senses. He said that he really didn't like that side of the girl. She still didn't appear. Che wanted to grab her again, but an even greater stream of aura came out of the girl, pushing him away. If this continues, Lu Yu will suffer enormous damage. The third prince confidently decided that he should try to bring her to her senses again. He flew up sharply from behind, as if an electric shock had struck his hands, but he did not twitch and asked the princess to come to her senses. Baring her teeth, the young lady hit her boyfriend with energy again and he gasped. Du Guyi no longer played any melody, but simply looked at it all, not daring to interfere in any way. Che wanted to say that Lu Yu had not yet shown her true self. She should not forget that she was his and he was hers. These words had their effect on the princess, and the evil energy began to recede. Yi Wang looked at the back of the young lady's head with satisfaction, realizing that everything was working. Pressing close to her from behind, Che called the youngest Miru's name again, rejoicing. She immediately turned around, freed herself from her tenacious hands and grabbed his face, asking the reason for his injuries. Looking at his betrothed, the prince realized that she didn't remember anything at all. Che assured the girl that nothing special had happened to him and Lu Yu blamed everything on Du Guyi. Yi Wang asked the young princess to no longer be like she was today and she understood everything. Du Gu simply followed them with his eyes, and everyone continued to celebrate. Finally, the next day, the emperor introduced the competition. The one who turns out to be the best will receive a reward from him. Approaching Lu Yu, Yi Wang invited her to compete, and she immediately asked what she would get for his loss, because all her opponents automatically lose. Du Gu broke their privacy, saying that he would also like to compete and asked Miss Miru to explain the rules. Che was dissatisfied with this treatment, but the girl did not react to this and agreed. The arrow hit the poor rabbit straight in the throat. Several men approached her with her brother, asking what kind of weapon she was using. The girl replied that it was a hand bracelet with arrows, and at that very second an arrow flew towards them. The prince screamed, shouting for his servants to protect Lu Yu, because there was a murderer in the bushes. The young princess said not to be disturbed and fought off the arrow. The boy was upset that he did not protect her and she advised him to better protect himself. Immediately after these words, a hail of arrows poured down on them, causing the prince to worry. A dozen arrows fired simultaneously rained down on Lu Yu. Her brother was scared, asking what should they do. However, she was not at all scared and skillfully began to deflect the arrows. The boy was in shock, realizing that without her protection he simply would not have survived. The girl could block blows from all sides and this was very surprising and saving at the same time. Suddenly, the last arrow appeared and Lu Yu jerked her dagger at it, cutting it into pieces. However, an arrow still flew at her. It turned out to be double. The eighth brother shouted at her to be careful. In just a second, this arrow was shot down. The girl turned in the direction where the arrow was flying and screamed out the name of her man. But unfortunately or fortunately, it turned out to be the prince of the country Ao Yun on his horse. The girl thanked him and he waved him off, saying not to worry. Afterwards, Yu turned away and went to her friend. They immediately moved far away. A gentle wind was blowing, lifting the girl's silks up. It seemed that these were all Du Guye's people. It was very bad, even very problematic. Unexpectedly, her companion said that the emperor could also encounter murderers and the girl thought about it. Could it be that the empress wants to quickly raise the prince to the throne? So this is a rebellion. The eighth prince invited you to go and help the emperor. The princess began to come up with a plan. If this is true they did, then not only the emperor, but also Che is in danger. But Lu Yu, for her own convenience, did not take horses with her at all. Then what should she do? None of those who previously shot arrows were caught, which means she must catch. Yu approached Prince Du Guyi, saying that if none of the culprits were caught, then everyone would simply die. After which the girl apologized in advance for her rudeness and, jumping sharply, she found herself behind the prince. His guards wanted to approach, but the girl abruptly waved her hand, and later wanted to knock the guy off the horse. But there was no need to do this, because Guyi himself jumped off, allowing her to take possession of the horse and borrowed it. The young princess galloped away, telling the eighth prince that she would go first to help, and let him catch up. He shouted a short agreement and immediately the servant turned to Du Gu, asking him to pay attention to him. Parnasha said that all the arrows were signed with Lu's name or symbol. The eighth prince wondered, could it be Lu? The prince of the country, Ao Yun, only said that they were just guests, and that they should not overdo it. The young princess rode on a horse in the hope that everything was all right with her betrothed. Hearing some commotion and seeing the emperor, Lu Yu quickly walked towards him. Halfway there, she greeted him and asked where Wang Che was. The emperor screamed and pointed his finger towards the forest, saying that they were ambushed and Che was protecting him, but remained there. Yu was amazed and alarmed by Yi's well-being, already preparing for the worst. The man shouted after her to go forward and be sure to save Che. She, of course, listened and galloped forward at all the speed she had. Finally approaching, she saw a huge massacre and many bodies that lay in a huge mountain. On it, cutting the enemy in half, stood the third prince, Wang Che. Seeing the girl, he smiled, as if he had completely forgotten about the battle, but he was already being attacked. Lu Yu screamed, telling him not to get distracted. Behind the guy there were two fighters with daggers, shouting for the prince to say goodbye to his life. There were also servants on the battlefield and, of course, Muru's father and grandfather. The girl jumped off her horse and flew in the air. The lady extended her hand, from where two arrows flew out of the bracelet. She screamed angrily. The arrows hit the target without even straining the third prince and giving him the opportunity to relax a little. He was amazed at his maiden speed and accurate hits. You can't tell that she's only 13. Immediately after this, the girl approached Che and saw blood on his hand, realizing that he was wounded. The guy wanted to say that the blood was his, but the girl got so angry that she left. She rushed past her opponents with lightning speed, knocking absolutely all of them off their feet. In a killer dance, she amazed not only her husband, but also her grandfather and father. The allies were in complete shock as their opponents died a second before they had time to figure it out. They thought the same thing, amazed at how strong the princess's skills were. And in the end, everyone came to the same verdict. Thank God I'm not her enemy. Che went down to his wife and said that she was too impatient, because he was not injured at all. Unexpectedly, even for them, blue clouds of incomprehensible smoke appeared around them. The princess said to be careful, because the fumes most likely contained poison. There was no way back since it was a dead end, and no one felt the desire to jump down from the cliff. Behind the prince and princess, someone was on all fours while they decided what to do next. He stood up and said that it was best for both of them to go to hell now. The unfamiliar warrior loaded his hands with something and wanted to throw the prince and princess off the cliff. The grandfather and the servants were in complete shock, not expecting such a turn of events. Che noticed how strong the warrior's internal energy was when Lu Yu noticed that he had poison in his hands. The prince took the young princess by the waist, charging his other hand with energy. They pressed their palms together, which resulted in the two auras joining together, creating a contradiction. Something strange appeared around their hands, and then their energy hit each other. Both men started bleeding from their mouths. They began coughing loudly and wincing from the taste. Meanwhile, Lu Yu was already angry and was preparing to attack the unknown person. Che waited with a smile. You decided that that guy should die, because how dare he touch her boyfriend, much less cripple her? The girl extended her hand, saying that the warrior should now go to hell. Two arrows flew out of the bracelet. The prince's and the fighter's hands were still together. However, when two arrows hit him, he began to grunt, after which the girl fired her double arrows at the man a couple more times. He was thrown back, grunting and coughing up blood as Wang turned around. He didn't quite understand what was going on and when his wife managed to send the arrows so easily. When the warrior wanted to try again to jump away from the arrows, he was caught by surprise by a second arrow that flew into his chest. He grabbed his torso, trying to understand what was wrong with him, but later realized that a second arrow had been sent. The young lady was in the air and again threw one of the arrows, shouting for the unknown person to taste his poison. A dozen arrows were sent flying at him in order to completely neutralize him, but once they hit his breastplate, the arrows did not have the desired effect. He sucked the poison from the arrows, and then bent down and sent it into the ground straight towards Prince Che. The guy looked at his hand and was horrified, because there was definitely not paint there. There was some kind of poison stain on his palm, and looking at it, the prince's cough intensified. Lu Yu flew at the fighter with a dagger and, seeing that picture with Wang, asked him to hold on, after which not only arrows, but also a huge number of sticks flew at their enemy. The girl drove the stranger to white heat and left him to bleed with arrows and strange sticks in his chest. Lu Yu heard a crash from where Yi Wang was standing and became very worried. She turned around sharply and screamed his name. He fell while standing on several small islands of stone. During the fight, someone accidentally touched him. Without hesitating for a second, the girl jumped after him in order to somehow cover him. Kuo Hen shouted something to the princess, but she did not listen. Finally reaching her lover, the girl worriedly took him by the waist. He was bleeding from his mouth. She asked how Che was feeling, but he could only croak her name. During the fall, the third prince took the girl's face in his hands and said that she must live. After that, he let her go and pushed her back, finally saying that he loved her. At that moment, they had not yet managed to fly far, so the girl was thrown back to the servants and the others, but she did not stay there for long, falling again into the abyss. At the speed of light, she moved over the falling stones and approached Che. She came to save him, after which she pulled the silk thread and tied it on the nearest tree. Thanks to the invention of the young princess, they got out unharmed, despite early wounds and impacts from stones. It turned out that this heavenly silk is multifunctional. However, unfortunately, it is not as long as we would like. To return to land, Yi Wang tore the silk with his sword and they moved aside onto land. As soon as they returned, Lu Yu asked about her boyfriend's well-being and gave him some kind of berry. Wang Che began to meditate, his black spot on his arm gradually disappearing. The guy's sword was surrounded by some kind of small pink snake, but, fortunately, this did not stop him from returning his weapon. The guy again focused on the sound of the grass blowing in the wind. Something was wrong. The snake began to hiss and Lu Yu left Che, going somewhere and suspecting something. Sitting in the tall grass was a man from the army that attacked the emperor and the third prince himself. He made a sound similar to the hissing of a snake. Returning to her lover, the girl said that the garbage had been removed. It seems that there are many people who would like to spare Yi Wang from life. Lu Yu and Wang Che were already leaving the place where the second arranged his meditation. The girl asked if he was okay and he replied yes. They approached the forest and Yu asked if they could get through there. Che said that he has all the strength to do this. Then the young princess put on bulletproof gloves and smiled, preparing for the carnage. The girl asked if the prince knew who ambushed them, and he replied that it was definitely not the Empress's people or Du Guyi. At that moment they were flying in the air and now they have finally landed. At that same second, 4 slabs with spikes jumped out of the ground, but they escaped the fate of being crushed. A net was thrown on them immediately after that. Lu Yu really liked the net, because it was completely made of heavenly silk. The girl grabbed a web with spikes and decided that it would be worth taking for herself. However, she pulled out the thorns, because they would still need them in their journey through the forest. The couple were flying in the air and wanted to push again from the ground. There was a pit with spikes in it, covered with a cloth. Before Che hit the thorns, Yu pulled her silk thread and grabbed a nearby tree. They were lucky and the couple flew out of the pit safe and sound, with a smug smile on their lips. But suddenly the princess heard a strange sound that loudly cut through the air. They were hit by 2 jets of shuriken. Yi Wang skillfully jumped up, avoiding hitting him and his girlfriend, who was sitting on his shoulders. This weapon was pretty good, but the traps were still too banal. Yu voiced these thoughts out loud and Che was surprised. How could she think about this in such a situation? Afterwards, the youngest Muru with a smile told the prince to wait until she was free and make 1 trap for him. The third brother said that he would wait and then see how good she was. The girl switched to another topic, saying that since they had already activated their troops, they did not underestimate the prince. An army of about 30 fighters appeared before them. Che asked with a smile if he should feel better because of this. The prince and princess took a defensive stance, already preparing for battle. Since the opponents have come, they must taste their strength. The couple went into the middle of all the events, finally wishing each other good luck and to be careful. Yu and Che skillfully dealt with the warriors, cutting their throats and bellies with their daggers and small scalpels. Almost at the end, they seemed to be dancing a waltz, while still fighting at the same time, leaving white lines from the blades in the air. In the middle it turned out that they were able to cross paths and exchange glances, smiling affectionately. Immediately after, they missed each other slightly. The third prince once again cut someone's limb, and the princess at the other end of the field also fought off the fighter. The future spouses then struck a model pose, still elegantly fighting back and dismantling the entire army. Lu Yu seemed to be dancing at that time, just like that time in the tower. The prince of the country, Ao Yun, watched all this from the branch of a huge tree, along with his guards. Yu and Che were surrounded by a huge army, and they weren't even crippled. Yes, they are indeed quite strong. One of the guards said that the strongest warriors of the sacred land of snow will be torn to pieces. And the second one said that the Iwang army would be there soon. The servant told Prince Du Guyi that she would obviously be a big obstacle for them. The guy turned his gaze to the carnage, and the servant continued, saying that the princess would be a big hindrance in their plan. Yu is the enemy, and that's one of the reasons why he's here, to remove the obstacle to Ao Yong country and kill Wang Che. Du Gu signaled with his hand, raising his palm to the level of his chin, and the servant began to blow the horn, creating a loud signal. At that moment he reached Ao Yun's troops. They began to set fire to a huge number of balls with hay inside. Having done their job, they sent large burning spheres down the rock straight into the thick of the forest, setting it on fire. One of these balls reached Yu and the third prince, setting fire to absolutely everything near them. The princess and Che realized that they were caught in a ring of fire and now all the warriors would simply burn. That is why the guy took his bride by the hand and said that they wash their hands. Jumping up from their spot, the pair soared into the air and left the fighters to burn alive. It was a good opportunity because they didn't have to figure everything out on their own. Having flown a sufficient distance, they stopped. The fire was still close and did not allow itself to be left behind, but those who could not go further. Ahead of them awaited huge clouds of blue poisonous gas that had poisoned them on the rock before. Lu Yu and Yi Wang stopped, not daring to go further. The flames of the fire were igniting the backs of their clothes. Du Gu looked at this picture. He was very interested in what would come first. Will the prince be able to make it in time, or will fire and poisonous clouds of gas kill them first? Lu Yu and Wang Che were surrounded on both sides, with one fire, and with the other poisonous gas. Suddenly, a second fireball fell on them, leaving them bewildered. Who's leaving them? The ball caused the forest to turn red even more. The flames continued to grow. A few seconds later, the forest completely burst into flames, seemingly burning every living thing alive. Meanwhile, the royal concubine was hysterical. 3 days have passed since Yu and Che disappeared in the forest, and their bodies have not yet been found. The Empress approached the woman, sarcastically expressing her condolences. However, the concubine shut her up, telling her to keep her barbs to herself. But the Empress continued, saying that the royal concubine had lost the battle because her son had disappeared. The woman asked Liu whether she really had the right to sentence her to death alone. The Empress grabbed her hand, saying that she had every reason to do this, because she was the mother of the Tianqian country. She wanted to take the life of the concubine, because it would be better if she simply died. Moreover, the sister loves her son too much, and therefore she is no longer alive. She could not accept the fact of the prince's death, so she drank poison and died. The concubine snorted. This is not the end, because it is not decided who lost and who won, until the bodies of the prince and princess were found. Liu said that she no longer had a son. Then what was she going to use against her? The Empress said at that moment that His Highness would never survive tomorrow. A fourth person, Muru Wu Di, appeared in the room with them. The man came to apprehend the criminal who killed the prince, and sweat began to run down Lia's face. The woman rebelled, started screaming and asking how he could even slander the Empress. When she asked the guards to kick out the old man, no one moved and she was seriously frightened. Liu asked what evidence they had against her, and when Wu Di said that they didn't need evidence, her face turned white. Muru Wu cried out that His Highness the Prince deserved to die, and the Empress was horrified. In the end, it turned out that concubine Lu had arranged all this. She asked where her father was and Wu Di explained everything. Then he turned to Liu and shouted that killing the prince of the ruling Lord Yi Wang was a serious crime. The Empress screamed, frightened by the concubine, but she, shaking with sadness and tears, began her speech. She said she made her lose her son, that is why she should not hope that the crown prince will live. After which Chen's face was painted with rage. She said that she would make her son die 1,000, or even 1,000,000 times more painful. The Empress's face turned white with fear for her child. She could not believe that Chen would do this to him. When the guards dragged her to the entrance, Liu screamed in hysterics and squirmed, resisting. The right-wing prime minister arrived at the emperor's palace around midnight, reporting that they had received a secret report with information that Yi Wang was collaborating with the country of snow, and also the murder of Prince Wang Che and Princess Lu Yu occurred. The emperor must make a decision. The emperor wanted to say that there was no such evidence, but the right-wing prime minister said that what a man holds in his hands is divided, the head urgently needs to make a decision. The premier said that the 9th and 13th princes are ready to become the groom, and the one who killed Yi Wang should be dead. The concubine will treat anyone as her own son. The emperor was shocked, because the eldest of these princes was only 10 years old. The right-wing minister began to act assertively again. He said that eventually the time of peace would end if any of them fell, so it would be better for His Highness to make a decision. At such moments, the emperor must make the right decision so as not to bury his country in the ground. And since the prince and princess unexpectedly died in a fire, the prince and the leftist prime minister want to take over the empire. The prince has strong support on his side, so it will be difficult. After long minutes of silence, the emperor shouted that he gave permission to overthrow this prince. The premier bowed and left the emperor's palace, preparing to head back. The moon shone as brightly as ever. The first prime minister returned and cried out, saying that he had received an imperial decree. The left prime minister stood greeting the crown prince along with the entire army. Several guards followed the prince to ensure that he did not escape. The prime minister was about to read the imperial decree, but so far he only shouted and announced its presence to everyone. The left minister read the decree stating that Prince Yen Yangchen would lead the army. Everyone was on their knees, heads bowed and showing complete respect, but no one was happy. Prince Yangchen was only happy with this decree, smiling smugly and putting on a serious expression. The head of the army was very angry, because how could Prince Zhang Yen lead the army? When the left prime minister finished, everyone rose from their knees, but with a delay. He was asked whether he had the mark of a tiger. The minister asked why I would show the tiger seal to the emperor, and the head of the army said that he would only accept it with the seal. After all, this is a rebellion. They don't even follow the imperial decree. The head of the army said that they would only accept a decree with the tiger seal, only that was important to them. Their eyes will never even blink, because from today only a decree with the tiger seal will move them. All the warriors shouted that they respected only the silence of the seal and nothing else. The leftist prime minister said that since they only recognize the third prince, it means that this is a crime equivalent to rebellion. Prince Yang was shocked by how his brother trained this army. They would rather die than carry out any decree. Several people from the army were hit by a strong stream of poisonous force. They cried out loudly in pain, holding their chests. This is exactly where the energy hit. The left minister asked if they would comply and heard the answer no. In this case, the prime minister cried out, tying his army to put them down. The person who most likely possessed the strongest power with poison charged his hands with energy. Prince Yang asked if the warriors really wanted to lose their families for disobedience. However, the entire army immediately said that they only respect the tiger seal. The leftist prime minister shouted for the entire army to be killed immediately. The chief of the minister's army screamed, already about to kill the entire army of the third prince. However, unexpectedly someone interfered with this. In the silence of the night, this quiet sound was too loud. The head was prevented by redirecting his flows to two targets on the sides of the warriors, and he immediately turned around. Crown Prince Yang and also the leftist prime minister were in complete confusion, not understanding who had stopped the assassination. From somewhere behind, a very familiar voice was heard, shouting furiously, asking who dared to touch his people. The entire army of the third prince smiled and wondered, how could this be? Is it even possible to rise from the dead? They turned towards the voice and saw behind them the untouched Prince Wang Che and Princess Lu Yu. Everyone turned around at the familiar voice and saw Princess Yu and Prince Che. Prince Yang and the leftist prime minister were shocked, because only recently everyone was talking about their death. The pair descended from the small pillar to the ground, confidently walking forward towards the head of their army. First, he and his troika greeted their general and princess by kneeling, after which the whole army shouted greetings to His Royal Highness and the princess. The crown prince was shocked, because the third brother was supposed to die out in the fire. Yes, they are unbending from life. Yi Wang turned to the leftist premier, saying that he was quite brave for daring to touch his people. The guy approached the man, asking if he was surprised that they were alive. Everyone thought the prince and princess were dead, right? On the day when a fireball fell on them, they barely managed to get out, fighting it off. However, they were caught in clouds of poison, where their lives would end forever. But Lu Yu was prepared, and as soon as they were surrounded by poisonous gas, she gave her boyfriend some kind of berry. Che got scared at that moment and asked what the girl gave him, and she replied that, of course, an antidote. The fire almost reached them, but, fortunately, they were now protected from the toxic fumes. They tried to run as far away from the fire as possible, jumping into the blue clouds. But something was still catching up with them, preventing them from quietly hiding and surviving, returning safely to the palace. It turned out to be a huge fire dragon that was following on their heels. Yu asked her future husband if he could escape, because the dragon was still chasing them. Wang Che said that there would be no problem with this and asked about the antidote. The princess replied that it was only a weak poison. The prince and princess continued to gallop, moving through the air first to the right, then to the left. After Lu Yu drew Che's attention to a path between the trees, behind it there was a cliff straight into the water. They saw in this their chance for salvation and breathed a sigh of relief, glad that they were not doomed to be warmed alive. With quick jerks they went to the cliff and jumped into the water. By that time, the fire had almost set the hem of the princess's beautiful dress on fire. They fell, leaving behind only splashes of water, and relaxed, letting the water drag them a little lower until they came up with a plan. The left minister was at a loss and tried to justify himself, saying that they went against the decree of the emperor himself. And that is precisely why they must be executed immediately. The prince snatched the decree from the hands of the leftist prime minister. After carefully examining the gold-colored paper, it flew into the minister's face. Crossing his arms, the third prince said that the decree was no longer valid. This means that they cannot possibly be traitors. However, the leftist prime minister still said that an imperial decree is an imperial decree. The man took the decree in his hands and said that the emperor was quietly issuing a new decree, but at present they were not following it. The prime minister's army drew their swords and said that all who disobey the emperor's orders must be killed. Prince Che was surprised at how brave the leftist prime minister was, because he was going to attack him. He objects to such a decree, and what will he do with it? Lu Yu joined Che, saying that she, too, was ignoring the emperor's decree. What will the left minister do to her? The prime minister, Prince Yang, and the head of the army of the left minister were simply in complete shock from such a statement. But Yu continued, saying that she even likes to ignore this decree, and the man can run to complain about her. He can go and talk about how Lu Yu and Yi Wang are ignoring the emperor's orders, but who even heard it? Wang Che cried out, asking the left premier to turn his full attention to him now. Afterwards he said that in this territory only his words count, and this was confirmed by the entire army, shouting that they had not heard anything before. Lu Yu burst into laughter, most likely because she remembered her words earlier, back then at the premier's residence. It turned out that even the minister's soldiers began to fear the princess. Prince Yang said that the decree was truly absurd, so there was no need for meaningless debate. The man agreed with the prince and said that if so, then return to the palace with a report. Lu Yu asked him why he leaves everything like that. The prime minister asked a counter question. Miss Muru wants to stop the imperial envoy? The girl asked what country this messenger was from, the sacred land of snow? Or Ao Yun? Or maybe the countries of Tian Chen? Afterwards, the young princess said that she would let anyone who could move more than 10 meters away from her, but for the rest, only death will await them. The left premier screamed, ordering everyone to immediately attack the girl. The first warrior tried and was immediately met by the embrace of death. The girl fought off attacks from all sides just as she had fought off arrows 3 days ago. The warriors began to attack Lu Yu, putting their daggers forward, but suddenly a man appeared from behind, charging his hands with poison. Che noticed him and shouted to his lover. At first I was not at all excited. There were a lot of sakura petals flying around. However, one of the blades cut him and the girl was alarmed. Something seemed to touch the switch. The girl immediately grabbed these 2 blades, stopping them in the air and prohibiting them from coming closer. She sharply spread her arms to the sides, pushing the blades away from her and gracefully waving the silks. The man behind was already preparing to celebrate his victory, but the princess smiled sarcastically. Yu leaned forward towards the people holding the daggers and kicked the man in the jaw from behind with her foot, then she grabbed the knives from those in front. She then lightly swung her blades, knocking the fighters' heads off their necks. The third prince looked at her in shock. After which she jumped into the air, as if dancing a ballet, and made several turns, throwing another dagger. The fighter who was hit by the knife was surprised by the speed of the young princess's movements and fell. At the same time, the girl was already being attacked. Lu Yu tore off her long pink belt and hit her opponent with it, just like a whip. He flew to the side coughing blood and screaming. The girl did all this so skillfully and without unnecessary words that a chill ran down the backs of the fighters. When you landed, she took off her pink silks. Prince Che blushed and their army whistled. The girl just said that she was very hot and her clothes were in the way. She tore off almost everything, leaving only a short platinum. Prince Yang and the premier looked away, and Yi Wang shouted to the troops not to look, otherwise he would tear out their eyes. The girl began to argue with her boyfriend, and meanwhile the one whose belly the princess had recently made a hole in began to get up. The man realized that she had no internal energy, which meant she was fighting with her fists, and he believed in himself. Once he was fully on his feet, he ran towards the young lady without even defending himself. She, of course, noticed this and reacted quickly, demolishing the enemy with one blow. Even Wang Che didn't understand how she did it, because with one simple blow, the person in his grip went soft and fell. Meanwhile, Lu Yu jumped back during the attack. She used a blow to the seventh vertebra, which, if broken, even God cannot save. Yi Wang's army started shouting and cheering the princess, saying how incredible and good she was. After this situation, no one began to attack anymore. Prince Che ordered everyone to gather below and try. Wang then turned to Prince Yang, saying that he would not hurt him, but if anyone dared to take a step in his direction, they should not blame him for being heartless. Lu Yu said that they should go back, because they had so much fun. He agreed and was about to say something later, but looked back. Old man Pei Qingli was nowhere to be found. Afterwards, the head of the army approached him with the words that the prince and the left example wanted to take over the army. Che must make sure that all is well with the dragoon army. Afterwards, the prince ordered Wu Qiu to gather armies and go with him, but Yu slowed him down. He was wounded, and she wanted to go first, but he and the soldiers would come later. Moreover, a concubine in the palace. Che wanted to object, but the girl said that she would be fine and they would see each other later. The guy finally agreed and Lu Yu went to the palace. Meanwhile, a bloodbath was taking place there. Kuo Hen and Yang Hu can be said to be left alone. There were many wounded around them, many dead, and those who were still able to fight. Suddenly, one of the soldiers appeared at the door along with the royal concubine. He held a blade to her throat. Hen and Hu were shocked. How dare he threaten the concubine? They demanded from them a seal with a lion and even injured the woman's hand. After that, he again put the knife to her throat, saying that if they did not give them the signet, the concubine would die. Kuo Hen didn't know what to do. His duty was to protect the prince. That is why he, after thinking, apologized to the concubine. She replied that everything was fine and her life was not that important. The main thing is that they do their duty. Tears flowed down her cheeks, but she still did not stop saying that they should not dare give up her son's signet. After which she grabbed the blade and screamed that she would no longer allow her son to be threatened. She wanted to cut her own throat. Kuo Hen screamed in horror, not understanding why she was doing this. He did not want the royal concubine to die before his eyes. However, unexpectedly for the concubine and everyone present, someone hit the blade with an arrow, and it flew off along with the dead soldier. It was Lu Yu. She grabbed the concubine's arm and greeted her. The woman was scared, but at the same time she was very happy. Kuo shouted as he greeted the princess. She turned to the concubine, saying that she and Che were not even married, and she was already about to die. The woman immediately began to ask if everything was okay with her son, and the young princess assured that yes. Now they had something more important to do and it would be distorted by all the warriors in their palace. Meanwhile, in the palace, people from the left and right premiers were pestering the emperor. The left was ordered to deal with the prince's demotion and tried to convince the man that Prince Yang had in no way tried to kill his brother. The rightists said that the source of the fire could not have appeared out of nowhere and was obviously ignited by the killers of the leftist prime minister. People on the left tried to explain that all this was slander. The new prime minister said that he plans to gather all officials and discuss the topic of eliminating the prince. The minister tried to ask the emperor to announce the decree. The emperor was silent while the prime minister tried to shout to him and explain that Prince Yang had to be eliminated. The leftist premier tearfully tried to prove that the prince should not be demoted because they no longer have Prince Wang. The decree was issued, the left minister's people tried to repeal the order, but the operator said it was residual. Unexpectedly, a soldier came to them to report that Yi Wang was not dead. Everyone was amazed at this statement. They did not believe that Prince Wang could even survive. The soldier said that now the third brother is walking towards the palace with the soldiers of the detachment. All the prime minister and even the emperor were happy about this denunciation. They knew that Che would not die so easily. Grandfather asked what about the leftist prime minister, and they were told that he had returned with the prince, ready to capture the man who tried to kill him. Now the guy brought in soldiers to save the king. This news made the emperor perplexed. The emperor looked at the soldier skeptically, realizing that the prince would not be able to escape. Meanwhile, Prince Wang also received a report. The warrior scared everyone with his scream, because he was already expecting to hear the worst. The guy said that the Mirror X was on fire and the princess hadn't even left there yet. The news shocked the third prince. He was very worried about his future wife and ordered the soldiers to follow him. He moved with quick and sharp movements from roof to roof in order to quickly get to the palace. Jumping onto the roof that was located right in front of the palace and looking at it, the guy was overcome with horror. The third prince was at a loss, because the palace was completely engulfed in flames. He was worried. They called him to the door, asking him to look. There, inside the palace, stood the princess and the warrior. He hit the girl with his knife, shouting that she should go to hell. The blonde was seriously scared for Lu Yu. Was she so tired that she couldn't even fight against such a guy? Che was damn angry and, waving his sword, cleared his way between the fire. They tried to shout out to him, but he didn't react at all. The guy flew into a room filled to the top with fiery flames. Behind him stood the warrior of the left prime minister. Yi Wang cut off his hands and went to his beloved, asking how she was, but he was deceived. It also turned out to be an agent who charged his hands with energy. After that, the girl hit Che in the chest, and a wave of bad energy ran through his body. She screamed at Wang to die now. The guy realized too late that he had been deceived. Blood began to flow from his mouth, but he found the strength to give retaliatory energy to his opponent's head. She was thrown back and blood began to flow from her head. The prince clutched his chest and fell to his knees, unable to do anything else. Above his head, a burning stick fell straight onto the third brother's torso. His last thought was the name of his beloved. At the same time, in the palace with the concubine, Lu Yu felt something very strange. A woman noticed the girl's poor health and asked if everything was okay with her. She waved it off. Afterwards she asked if everything was with them and looked towards the mirror temple. The concubine hurried you, saying that it was time for them to leave. The princess agreed and was about to go forward. However, already turning away from the temple, she felt a strange knocking in her chest and at first did not understand anything. However, after that she began to see monstrous pictures of her future husband. She knew that all this was very bad. Turning around, the girl left, not reacting at all to the calls of the guards or the royal concubine herself. Arriving at the temple, Lu Yu saw huge flames. The prince's entire army was putting it out, and someone encouraged them, shouting that he was still inside. Once in the yard, the girl screamed, asking who else was inside and if she had heard something. They told her that the third prince was still on fire. The young princess, of course, went into the thick of the fire in order to save her boyfriend. They wanted to stop her, but everything was clear. You burst into the mirror temple, almost flying along the stairs. At one point she noticed something on fire. It was Wang Che, lying almost unconscious under a huge wooden stick. The princess ran up to him and quickly threw away the burning stick that had previously served as a frame for the ceiling. She cupped the prince's face, whispering in his ear to wake up. There was still blood on his lips that hadn't even dried yet. The guy barely woke up, and when he fully came to his senses, he told you to leave. His heart was wounded and he would not live long. With the next words, she completely took away the guy's ability to speak. The young princess said that since he was going to die, she would die with him. Touching Prince Che's chest, the girl said that she would die with him so that none of them would feel lonely. The mirror temple burned with a red flame, absorbing all living things with its hot presence. Concubine Chen was held by several soldiers, because without them she would have long ago run to the temple for her children. Grandfather Muru thought that the flames had long ago consumed the prince and princess. Prince Yang and the leftist prime minister hoped that they were both already dead. Kuo Hen shouted, trying to reach both of them. Yan Hu shouted, notifying everyone that the temple was collapsing. Wang Chei's men were already heading straight into the fire, intending to save Yu and Yi Wang. However, they had trouble getting through, because the fire was too strong, but they decided that they would enter even if they had to die. Even the fearful Yan Hu cried out that it would be better to die with his highness, and the others supported him. Prince Yang was in complete shock. What did his third brother do to these people so that they would be willing to sacrifice themselves for him? Kuo Hen, Yang Hu, and the head of the soldiers knocked down the door to the temple, slightly dispersing the fire. Hen cried out when he saw the prince and princess and was glad that they were still alive. The crown prince was in complete shock, as were the others. The girl dragged her lover on her while he chuckled contentedly, looking at her. A few minutes earlier, she had confessed something to him. Devushka said that they are similar, because both are lone wolves, but where have you seen that lone wolves walk alone? Wherever the prince goes, the princess will follow him. And it doesn't matter whether it's death or life. The guy stared at her in shock, saying that she was too good for him. Pressing his head to her chest, the girl said that while living in this world, no one had ever treated her the same way he did. And all this is his love. It was she who made him fall in love. Prince Che came across even more and his cheeks flushed red. Lu Yu admitted that she was hopelessly in love with Yi Wang, and therefore living with him or dying did not matter to her. And grabbing his hands, she said that under no circumstances would they die, they will live happily, better than anyone else. Yu is a fairy tale for Che to lean on her and she will definitely lead him out. He mentioned the difference in height, but the girl didn't care at all. Currently, Princess Muru was still pulling her prince out of the fire temple. It was almost completely destroyed. The flames danced in the light of the moon. Finally, almost falling from the huge curtains of fire, the young princess emerged with Wang Che on her back. Kuo Hen was in charge of all actions. He ordered the imperial doctor to be brought and he arrived. Lu Yu finally made sure that her lover was okay. She began to feel sideways and then the young lady fainted. Everyone was seriously scared when they saw the girl lying unconscious. Some time passed and as soon as lightning sounded in the distance, Yu woke up and screamed the name of the third prince. The leader of the warriors met her, greeting the master and asking how she was feeling. When asked about Che, he said that Prince Yi Wang was in the outer house and they were still trying to rescue him. Yu asked to be taken there and upon entering, she saw the emperor. He shouted that if they didn't save Che, they might not live anymore. After which a question arose about the medicine. They immediately began to carry it, obviously, a little later than the right time. A boy in dark clothes brought a bottle of medicine to the emperor. The man was unhappy, angrily asking why he was messing with the usual medicine. Lu Yu was noticed by the concubine, saying that she had better rest. However, she ignored it and walked towards the medicine, asking him to wait. Concubine Chen didn't even immediately realize that she had been ignored, but she didn't react to it. The princess, meanwhile, tested the emperor's very elixir. He rebelled, saying that this was his best. The emperor was very angry with the girl, because how could she think that he was capable of poisoning his own son? Du Yi took the bottle and poured everything into the servant who brought it. The man wanted to slander the lady, but the concubine stopped him and screamed, telling him to look back. The servant's face was torn, his eyes rolled back, and blood began to flow from his mouth. The emperor immediately began to make excuses, saying that the poison was in the drug. Lu Yu made a very angry expression on her face, saying that if anything happened to Che, she would destroy all of their 9 generations. The concubine ran to her daughter and said with words in her eyes that everything would definitely be fine with Yi Wang. General Muru temporarily finished healing, and everyone took notice, especially Junior Muru. When the prince was laid down, everyone present immediately bombarded the genitals with questions about Wang's condition. The man asked to calm down and said that the guy's heart was not hurt, because his internal energy protected him. And when you asked if everything would be fine with him, he replied that the poison of the country of Hao Jun had seeped inside the guy. The young princess looked at her sick lover. How many countries in total participated in the overthrow of Che? The youngest Muru asked the general if there was any way to save him, and the old man said that there was only one. However, the people of those places are very strange and move from place to place too often. Yu screamed, saying that it didn't matter at all. she will do anything to save the prince, even if it takes years. General Moore said that he once saved one of the people of those places, so that he could cope with this task himself. Leaning against Che's face, the girl said that she wanted her Wang Che to return completely healthy. The general assured the princess that even if he gave his life, he would definitely return his highness to normal life. Lu Yu gave the go-ahead for this, because he did not cause her strong distrust. Then she shouted for someone to draw her a bath, because she wanted to change. The emperor and the concubine were surprised. What does this little girl want to do? But she raised her hair and smiled. Weren't they the ones who wanted to see her real self all this time? Many years ago, Lu Yu promised not to show her face to anyone. However, today, unfortunately or fortunately, she needs to break this promise. As soon as the princess left her chambers, everyone was in complete shock when they saw her. Prince Che was in the palanquin, trembling slightly from the cold and fever. The girl approached her lover, touching his cheek, along which cold sweat was pouring. She asked if he could see clearly and said that this is exactly what he really looks like. There were no birthmarks on her face, they were fake. Afterwards she said that if he did not recognize her, then she would simply approach his lips the same way as always. The girl's father was completely bewildered. How could it be? His daughter was ugly. General Moore decided that he would think about it after his arrival. Lu Yu escorted the cart along with Che and the general, saying in her thoughts that he should return completely healthy. If she is not offended, she will never look in their direction, but if someone offends, she will grind them into powder. Standing in front of the huge army, she shouted, saying that they would kill anyone who touched her or Prince Che. She repeated her speech again and everyone supported the girl, shouting that they would do the same. The residence of the left-wing prime minister will be completely painted red today. People were dying around Hin Ai. The girl screamed in hysterics, completely not understanding what was happening and praying to God for forgiveness. The left minister was horrified looking at this picture. He said that it was not he who sent the killers to Yu and Yi Wang. And when the young princess put her sword to the prime minister's throat, he immediately said that it was Pei Chengli who did it. Afterwards, the girl asked if he really thought that she would allow someone to leave. The man was horrified when he heard the screams of his children. Lu Yu asked why he should now listen and see how his entire family was being killed before his eyes. The left-wing prime minister was overcome with hysterics. He shouted, asking how dare she ignore the law and kill an official of the imperial residence. However, the young princess was not at a loss, saying that she was actually studying with the very left-wing minister. Afterwards, the young lady asked to bring them all and the man heard them beg to spare them. All of them, the Lu Hin family, small and large, women and men, were beaten, and of course, they all called for their father. The left-wing prime minister sobbed, almost begging on his knees to spare his children and let them go. But the princess's orders are very weighty, so after her words not to spare anyone, the soldiers began to beat everyone with knives. And as soon as the soldiers finished, they immediately moved on to the very left prime minister. Even despite his pleas to leave him alive, they did not stop. Watching all this, the girl was jealous, because he could see his loved ones and it didn't matter whether they were alive or dead. But she cannot find out absolutely nothing about the condition of the man who changed her life so much. Meanwhile, several of his servants came to the emperor, asking what to do with the princess. The man told the girl to do whatever she wanted. This was a great opportunity to clean up the trash. 7 countries exist with each other and send spies. The left and right prime ministers have become stronger and he is afraid that they may take over the Tianqian Empire. The emperor raised his hand up, causing the birds to fly up sharply. Time to harvest those leaves and branches. After which the man asked where the young princess was now. It turned out that she was at the residence. Pei Chengli, however, he should have been dead a long time ago. There was also a bloodbath at Pei Cheng's residence. The girl interrogated his son, who tearfully screamed that he knew absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, one soldier approached her and said that they had not found Pei Chengli and also his youngest son. After which Yan Hu approached them with letters from the secret room that had not yet been burned. She grabbed them and started reading. Some already had holes in them, but that didn't bother her. Lu Yu clutched the letters in her hand and screamed, saying how good this Pei Cheng is, as well as the country of Ho Jun. It took them all 5 years to come up with the plan. But Wang Che was only 12 then. They're really good. Afterwards, the young princess said that everyone in this residence should be destroyed and went to the palace to the Empress. She turned to Yu and simply begged him to kill her so that the Qing branch would be interrupted. The woman fell on her knees in front of the maiden and begged, but this did not touch her at all. On the contrary, she asked how the Empress dared to ask her. She was horrified, shouting that this was too much. Liu decided to tell the truth and admitted that the princess had already been poisoned. It took a second for Lu Yu to remember the bloody ginseng tea. She said that she already knew about him and used the poison against her own poison. Afterwards, the young princess took poison out of her pocket and said that since the Empress loved poison so much, why shouldn't she use the same method? Muru Lu then went straight to Crown Prince Yang to complete her affairs. He was sitting in his chambers, holding a small glass with some liquid in his hand. He stood up and said that it looked like he or she was going to die today. Yang was jealous of the third brother, and then took a sip from the glass. After that, he said that he and his brother could not be together. When the girl saw that the poison had taken effect, she turned around and headed for the exit. The prince groaned, saying that there are still many things that Lu Yu does not know about. And right before the crown prince almost vomited his insides, he said that they definitely could not be together. Before leaving, the young princess said that instead of all this, she felt that they would definitely be together. There was also a commotion in the emperor's palace. People were running to him almost every minute with denunciations. And one of the extreme denunciations was that troops from the country of Zhao were stationed near their border. The situation was simply terrible. The right-wing prime minister suggested simply waiting and watching, but Princess Muru Lu was against it. When she entered, she shouted that they could not wait for an attack. Unfortunately, the third prince is unable to help them, and therefore she will protect Tianjin province herself. She didn't know how to fight, but Li Huan and Chen Shi should help her. Now she is all about protecting everything that belongs to Wang Che. And no one will even think about touching it, because no one simply can do such a thing. The peach blossomed too beautifully, which made the young lady begin to miss her future husband again. The troops of the Zhao country stood on the border with the Tianjin country. Everyone was already discussing the upcoming international tournament. All prominent figures gathered in the city of Shui. Chen Mu arrived from the sacred land of snow, and Feng Cheng arrived from the land of Chen, and they all came for prizes. There were many individuals who helped or were neutral, and there were also enemies. These are Muru Wu Di, Du Yi, Prince Du Guyi, Duke of Yi Shui City, Yi Wang Che, Yun Zhao, Yang Hus, Kuo Hen, Princess Yin Luo and of course Muru Lu Yu. Finally, Princess Muru arrived on a carriage. Immediately a huge hue and cry arose around her. Du Yi informed his master that they had arrived and was going to escort her out of the cart. She was met by a man who seemed to be an envoy from the emperor. Du Yi opened the curtains and asked his master to come out, and even the horse, seeing the beauty of the girl, was in complete shock. The girl was wearing a lovely white dress, and as soon as the men nearby looked at her, they immediately blushed. The man who met them immediately let them go ahead, telling them exactly where to go. A gentle wind blew, blowing Yu's hair through the air, and as if out of nowhere, sakura petals appeared. The young princess raised her head and saw the same sakura tree blooming. It was huge, probably the biggest thing you had seen. And now even on her head there were peach petals. It's blooming again. So where is her beloved Che? Already in some chambers, the girl was talking with Du Yi. It turned out that Du Guyi would not come, and for this mistake she ordered the guy to punish himself with 20 blows. Afterwards, Du Yi reported that everything was fine at the border now. There are no unexpected movements and General Lu Huang is reliable. The princess has nothing to worry about. 3 whole years ago, the countries of Chen and Zhao sent their troops to the border with Tianjin in order to surround it. Lu Yu commanded the Tiger Army and pushed the troops back 300 miles. The greatness of the name Muru Lu Yu amazed all 7 countries and became the center of attention, eclipsing absolutely all people. The girl wanted to turn to Du Yi, but someone called her from the street. It was some guy Yun Zhao from the land of snow. He said that now all the hotels were full, and therefore asked if the princess would allow him to stay with her. He wouldn't want to wander the streets anymore. It seems she was confused with a guy, because Zhao addressed her as brother, not sister, but even despite this, she agreed. After some time, the hour of the international Turin Volleyn came. It's definitely a busy place. 3 days had passed by the time Muru Lu was getting ready for the tournament. Yun Zhao, who was also going to taste the tournament, immediately ran up to her. The guy went with her and bombarded the girl with questions. However, before that, he asked the brother's name, and when the lady introduced herself, he began to build theories. He guessed that the so-called brother was someone from the Liu family in Lunan, but received a negative answer. Yun abandoned all other attempts to guess what family she was from and moved on to another topic. Still calling the girl brother, he asked if you had reserved seats. He just didn't and invited her to watch with him. Then he simply bombarded the young princess with all the information that he had in his head, and it seems that she even started to have a headache from such a stream of words. Miss Moore was already damn angry when they turned to her again, and therefore she screamed angrily. This made Yun Zhao cry a little. He didn't understand what he was doing wrong and why his brother was yelling at him. However, Yu took pity on the boy and angrily waved him off. Finally they arrived at the tournament site. The verbal diarrhea of the princess's traveling companion finally ended, and they were in relative silence. But as soon as they headed into the thick of things, Zhao again began to show and tell the girl everything he knew. First, he pointed to several fighters. The first of them was Chen from the country of Fengcheng. It seems like he was never defeated at all. But the second was their Chen Mu from the land of snow. There he is, the #1 professional. Yun Zhao looked around in admiration, realizing that today there were professionals everywhere and the tournament would be very pleasant to watch. Suddenly they hit a huge shield, and the head of the city screamed so that everyone would shut up and listen to him. He walked onto the stage and introduced himself. His name was Gang Wei. Today's international tournament will be led by him. Yun Zhao drew Lu Yu's attention to the Wulin treasure box. It was a bloody frog. At the end of Gan Wei's speech, the people around could no longer expect, and as soon as the tournament began, men and women began to shout in approval. In the first round, Yang Tong from Zhao country and Li Shisan from Nana Song country competed, and after a short amount of time, Yang Tong turned out to be the winner. Already in the 6th round, Cheng from the country of Chengfeng competed and he won. In the 14th round, Chen Mu from the sacred land of Snow won. In the 25th round, the girl Fang Hong won. She had a scary image, which slightly frightened Yun Zhao. Already in the 30th round, Lao Sai emerged victorious. And so, as soon as the kid from the land of snow wanted to discuss the tournament with Lu Yu, she quickly walked away somewhere. He realized that she was going to fight and was amazed. Du Yi handed a musical instrument to his master as he greeted her. She without a doubt went closer to her warrior. Yun Zhao was amazed and scared at the same time, because little brother has no inner spiritual energy. While Yu was almost running to Du Yi, her hat fell off along with the veil that covered her from insects and the sun. She did not react to this in any way, as if she had forgotten about her accessory and picked up a weapon for battle. Everyone was definitely amazed that there would be a battle with such a beautiful lady. However, even so, Yun Zhao did not understand at all that this was not a guy in front of him. He just thought that his brother definitely seemed to be his type. The boy's cheeks flushed red to the tips of his ears. Afterwards the girl entered the battlefield. The enemy said that it was better for her to go back, because it's not like he wants to hurt the girl. But Lu Yu said that in her opinion he should be afraid of this, because he would die. The man got angry and sped up, attacking the princess. However, even when the sword blade appeared before her eyes, she was not afraid. The girl just stood there, not reacting at all to the current situation. Lu Yu did not react in any way to the fact that the sharp ones were almost in front of her eyes, when Yun Zhao was very alarmed. But at that moment, when the girl's opponent pierced not her skull, but the wooden stage, everyone was shocked. Muru Lu immediately found herself behind the man's back and at that moment had already attacked. The enemy's body was cut into several parts, and in the last seconds of his life he simply groaned in pain. Yun Zhao, the host and everyone present were in complete shock. It all ended so quickly and simply that they didn't even have time to feel the beginning. Even some girl from her room, which was located right in the center, became interested. Yu gave Dewey her musical instrument, and everyone roared with indignation. This battle was terrifying in its ease, because the girl neutralized and killed the enemy in one movement. Muru Lu was about to leave and didn't even look back at Yun Zhao's cries asking her to wait for him. The young princess found her musical weapon 3 years ago in Tian Chen's treasury. You can easily decorate a beast with a melody and kill anyone. This is the melody of her zither, a blade that is easily carried by the wind. The second that her opponent swung, she easily ran her fingertips along the strings of the zither and the wind carried the attack away. The girl wanted a bloody frog and also wants to be number one in the whole world, also the country of Hozhong and Peichengli, she wants it all. That same night, an unknown man tried to sneak into her chambers, making his way along the roofs of houses. He reached the window of Yu's room. He launched something into the room through a tube and then deftly made his way inside, intending to take the girl alive. However, the unknown ninja did not have time. The girl got ahead of him, as if she already knew in advance that he would come. They threw incense into her room, which is really not bad, but not enough to kill her. The man got scared and loudly broke the windows. Meanwhile Lu Yu was already running her fingertips over the zither. A small wind appeared that carried the blades of this musical instrument straight to the offender. He tried to run away, but when the large blades grabbed him, he began to scream. At that very moment, Yun burst into Muru Lu's room, asking what happened. At that time, my brother was standing near the window and the boy approached him and saw blood on the asphalt. Yun Zhao asked about the cockroach, but you didn't answer and changed the subject, saying that they were leaving. In the morning, the redhead said that next time he could help with the cockroaches. Lu Yu came to the tournament again with her neighbor and today she fought against Fang Hong. Before the fight, Yun asked his brother to be careful, since this girl was really very insidious and creepy. Fang tried to somehow seduce her opponent and when Muru Lu did not react to this, she had already begun to take it away for her defeat. In this city, the young princess played the role of a guy, and no one saw her as that same princess. After Fang Hongyu's words, she made several movements with her fingers on the strings. The woman's clothes were immediately torn and she, covering herself with small shreds, accepted her defeat. Yun Zhao was shocked, not understanding how this was possible. An unknown girl asked Gan Wei where this guy came from. He immediately replied that he was from abroad. Only one person was following him and his origin was unknown. And the people who were sent by Wei literally yesterday were killed without asking anything at all. The girl said that they should investigate everything carefully, because this Yu is a very interesting person. A huge number of men have gathered right in front of Lu's hotel, wanting to see the hero. They tried to detain them so that they would not get inside. Du Yi came with a report, where he listed all the capabilities of the opponents, as well as their origin. Afterwards Yu asked a question about the border. However, the man had no news and they changed the topic to Yun Zhao. The lady said that even if it's not the same, it will be someone else. The next day at the tournament, Lu Yu competed with Liang Cheng. The girl told the enemy to start, because she was already very tired of waiting for him. He was insulted and was going to take revenge for it. Afterwards, he used his power and, accelerating, shouted that he would like to see all of Yu's skills. Muru Lu did not react in any way to the internal energy that was heading towards her like tenacious red vines. She jumped, skillfully moving in the air and avoiding attacks. She didn't really want to lose her life in such an easy battle. Liang indignantly asked where she was running away. They haven't even started the fun yet. Red vines again headed towards you, or rather towards the zither in her hands. She paused, allowing the enemy's energy to lightly surround her. And after that, she quickly flew out of the arrows surrounding her. Yun Zhao shouted, encouraging his brother and saying that he was moving cool. Finally turning her attention to the battlefield, Muru Lu noticed that Liang was not below. It turned out that he was very close behind her, with a malicious smile and a sparkle in his eyes. The man again surrounded her with his aura and internal energy, saying that without his zither, he apparently would not be able to defeat him at all. Suddenly, Miss Moore came downstairs, as if twirling in a ballroom dance. Liang Cheng was about to attack her. He really thought that he had every chance of killing the hero Lu. However, he was unlucky, because his opponent was quite strong and headed straight in the opposite direction to Liang. Lu did something as inconspicuous and silent as possible with the second fighter, and he didn't even understand what exactly. He simply jumped onto the stage, standing on one leg and not moving anymore. Everyone watching was shocked. Did Liang Cheng die? And it seems that he was really dead. Lu Yu won again. Everyone cried out triumphantly, admiring the new star. They didn't even understand how the so-called guy killed the enemy. It was already night, the full moon. The third day of the tournament was over and the last one remained. Lu Yu looked at the cherry blossoms. Yun Zhao approached the girl and said that she was just great today. He said he had never met anyone like her before. Even while fighting, Lu looked like a god. The thought flashed through the girl's head that he was simply lying. She remembered someone's back in the crowd. Could it be Che? Yoon interrupted these thoughts with his words about the ending. There are only 3 people left. The one who survives will be number 1. Suddenly, Du-yi walked into the room with a heavy load of 2 men on his shoulder. Lu said that apparently even in spring there will be mosquitoes outside. While the boy Du was throwing mosquitoes out onto the street, Yoon said that it wouldn't hurt for his brother to smile more often. People who look like God are always so cold, which means it wouldn't hurt to smile more often. This will be good for his health. Lu Yu stood up and snorted, shooing the boy out of the room, or rather, he thought so, because it seemed that there was no one else in the room except them. However, when Zeo turned around, he saw some ninja. He bowed and said that his master invited Lu to his place, but he immediately refused. At that moment, more fighters appeared out of nowhere, saying that in this case, you should not blame them for being rude. The young princess, or rather the prince, having already completely taken over the role of the guy, said that he would like to see how ignorant they are. The ninja immediately tensed up, preparing to either run away or fight, although closer, of course, was the first option. Within 5 minutes, bodies were flying out of Lu's team, breaking doors, windows and even the ceiling. There were very few fighters left, and therefore they decided to use the signature number. They threw something on the floor and it turned out to be toxic smoke, exactly like 3 years ago. Lu screamed angrily, saying how excellent it was. Meanwhile, there were also fighters outside, ready to kill you. He flew out of the window, saying that he would wait here when they killed him. He wondered what those people were capable of. Then he took the zither and carefully ran his fingertips along the strings, cutting his opponents in half. The main man shouted and encouraged his fighters, but Du-yi tackled him, piercing him through with a sword. One of the men approached Muru Lu, saying that his master was inviting him to his place. After which the guy was surrounded by 4 people representing different countries. They all wanted to invite Master Lu to offer something. Looking around, Lu didn't understand what was going on. Too many people came. And of course, they all asked to choose between the 4 of them. Maybe this is some kind of stupid joke? The girl took the zither tightly and prepared for battle. When was Muru Lu even under someone's control? All 4 guys thought completely different things. However, all these thoughts had one meaning. It seems that now they will be dealt with. The girl seemed to answer their questions in her thoughts, confirming absolutely everything. After all, she is Muru Lu. The girl ran her hands along the strings, trying to make a place for herself to pass through. Since these men want to die, she will fulfill their wish. In the light of the moon, the splashes of blood were much more beautiful and brighter than in the sun. Du-yi was very worried, so as soon as he was free, he rushed over, but the master was no longer there. Only bloody bodies remained. The guy now didn't know where to look for you, and he didn't know where she was supposed to go either. Meanwhile, Lu wandered through the forest, not understanding how to find a way out. She had absolutely no bearings in the forest and had been trying to get out for 2 hours. However, the girl is absolutely sure that she has already been on this path and is definitely walking in circles. Suddenly, behind me, I heard a branch breaking under someone's foot. You turned around and saw someone's silhouette. It turned out to be Du-yi. He changed his hair color from black to blue, matching the color of his eyes. They haven't seen him for 3 years now. He's more handsome than before, but he's still a piece of ice. Meanwhile, Du-gu realized that obviously this was not Muru Lu, because he couldn't be her. After which he voiced out that he wanted to kill Lu Yu. He said that there are a lot of people who want to kill him, and therefore he wants to see how Guyi can do it. Lu Yu had already begun to approach Du Guyi in order to try to kill him before he killed him. He deflected all blades and blows. Lu thought that this prince would definitely become an obstacle for Wang Che in the future, and therefore she was obliged to eliminate him. Afterwards, the prince of the country, Ao Yun, made a magic dome, imprisoning Princess Yu between the crowns of trees. The guy said that his spell would be cancelled after 3 days. Only after the cancellation will he be able to get out, and therefore let him be a good boy. Yu was surprised. 3 days? Yes, this is complete horror and ruins all her plans. She still hasn't received the bloody frog. Princess Yin Luo quickly realized that it was not a guy, but a girl, Lu Yu. She intends to enter their country, Hozhong. Obviously, the girl did not buy her status and is very talented, but this does not mean that she will not be used. The servant wanted to say that her brother would help strengthen the country, but Princess Yin Luo had to do it herself, because her brother was too sick. Wei was amazed, because the princess is only 14, and she has such thoughts and capabilities. The girl said that they would observe and under no circumstances send troops. She wanted to see the limits of his capabilities. The day of the tournament has finally arrived. There are absolutely no rules. The one who stays strong until the end will become number one in the whole world. The host asked Chen Mu, Feng Cheng and Lu Yue to go on stage. 2 guys were already here, but the third was nowhere to be seen. Wei was slightly perplexed, because Lu was not present at the tournament now and it was unknown when he would arrive. Chen Mu thought that he was afraid for his life, so he shouted that they should start now without wasting time. But suddenly Lu appeared, raising his voice. Everyone turned in his direction and even those present on the stage were slightly scared. Yu walked onto the stage with his zither. Mu and Cheng looked at him from above, and Yun Zhao was very happy. When Lu shouted for them to start immediately, the redhead burst into tears. What an impatient boy he is. Just a few hours ago, this guy was cutting down the forest with all his might in order to get out of the cage. One of the trees fell with a roar and fell, completely unable to see any obstacles. Suddenly, a familiar voice was heard from somewhere and Yu turned around. It was Yun Zhao saying that cutting down the forest is wrong. Afterwards he asked why his brother would insult the prince of the country Ao Yun. He didn't kill him, but simply used the spell of 9 traps to keep him in this place. Yun spent 3 whole days to find him. There are only 3 people in the world who can lift this spell, and one of them is Zhao himself. The second was Prince Wang Che. Lu remembered his white hair, but the redhead was already dragging him by the hand in order to return him to the tournament. Currently, Cheng and Mu wanted to attack Yu as 1 against 2, apparently, they already had a plan. Yun screamed, as he immediately understood the idea of their plan and shouted to his friend to be careful. 2 bodies were moving towards Lu. One wanted to fight using his internal energy, and the other with just 1 hand, since he did not have the other. Lu Bi just ran his fingers along the strings and suddenly found himself in a horizontal position in the air, after which he swung again, creating a huge blade with a wave of his hand along the strings and almost knocking everyone off their feet. Feng Cheng jumped back and avoided the blows from the zither blade while flying through the air. However, Lu suddenly caught up with him, ending up directly above his head. Then the guy waved his hand across the strings again, but Cheng was no longer there. Mu had to repel all attacks and at that second Yu appeared behind him, angrily whispering something in his ear. The guy shouted some kind of insult out of fear and tried to swing his sword, but Lu had already disappeared. Cheng and Mu could not find Lu Yu, because he was not in the arena. It was as if he was invisible or had simply evaporated. Yun watched this and couldn't believe his eyes. Princess Yin Luo also watched, and her servants said that these were hallucinations. They drew the princess's attention to the center of the arena and Lu stood there, as if nothing had happened, plucking the strings. Later, he jumped up as if dancing in the air and swung, about to make the final chord and send the fighters to hell. Feng and Mu wanted to attack, but Lu Yu skillfully plucked the strings, telling them not to rush. The spirits are already ready to drag the 2 of them to hell. The men's bodies began to bleed and blood came out of their mouths. They were scared to death and dying. Afterwards, all that was left of them in the arena were bloody spots on either side of the center where you stood. Princess Yin Luo was amazed, while Yun Zhao shouted approval to his friend. Finally, Host Wei announced that Lu Yu was now number 1 in the entire world at the Wulin International Tournament. It was night again. All the days of the tournament were finally over. Lu Yu received prizes and these are a bloody frog, clothes, and a yet unknown box. This afternoon, he defeated 2 of the strongest opponents, something that almost no one could win, until this day. Yun Zhao entered the room with a kettle in which tea was brewed. He was sure that his brother would become number 1 and he was right. The bloody frog is definitely a cool thing and it should only belong to brother. Tomorrow Lu is going to the Hozhong Empire. Maybe it's better for him to go with him to the sacred land of snow? They could travel everywhere and overthrow everyone with their power, but Yu replied that he wanted to be an official. The country of Hozhong suits him just right. Yun asked if he came to this country only because it was very close to him and received a nod. The guy got upset and asked if his brother was really going to stay in this country until the last moment and received a positive answer. It turns out that in this case they will be separated forever. This is damn bad and sad. After that, the guy began to pour tea for his brother, but suddenly he chuckled, seeming to be in slight shock. Immediately Yun drew attention to everything and noticed that he was pouring past the cup straight into Yu's lap. This is very bad. The redhead hastened to apologize, justifying himself by saying that his hand jerked and that he would immediately bring a towel. Muru Lu expected Zhao to do something, and now he was just going to give it all up? This is truly a rare poison. Meanwhile, Yun, already walking out the door, began to think, can't he stop him? Lu Yu arrived at the imperial palace of Hozhong country. He was presented as very loyal to this country and he was ready to prove it. He was given the rank of 3rd general and given the general's residence. The guy thanked the emperor with a bow. The guy was asked if he was familiar with the situation in all 7 countries. He replied that he did not know and would like to hear his majesty's instructions. Half the people thought this kid was a very good sycophant, while others thought he had a very arrogant look in his eyes. Princess Ainli agreed that he was indeed a sycophant and perhaps they should be happy about it. However, today Lu Yu is handsome. It was a special pleasure to see him so close. The emperor said that Minister Lu came from abroad and was already so devoted to him. It was flattering. Maybe the guy's young talent could be used for good. Lu was told that in the future he would be able to follow and learn from the prince, and later they asked how old the minister was. The guy replied that he was 16 and when asked about his wife, he replied that he was not married, and then the emperor decided that Yu was an excellent match for his baby In Luo. The minister was shocked by this statement, and the man continued, saying that they should celebrate another news today. So today, Lu Yu can marry the 17th princess In Luo. Now they just had to choose a date for marriage. The guy decided not to argue and said that he accepted the decree. He also thanked the emperor for this opportunity. Meanwhile, the girl was in complete shock, so he's also not against this? Everyone in the hall began to approach the minister and congratulate him on his future marriage. Muru Lu really prepared for absolutely everything, but she did not expect that she would be granted marriage. She is the princess of Tianquan province. What should she do with all this? After which one of the maids called Prince Lu to her, as her highness had called him. The girl asked the prince to follow her in order to take her to the place of their upcoming meeting. However, there was still something not right about this maid. Some kind of painfully strange aroma emanated from her. Prince Lu Yu caught this and became wary, but did not show it at all, without even making an effort, since he was a pro at this. Together with the girl, they walked to a huge peach tree. The maid said that in order for Lu to wait for the empress, her highness had to get herself in order. The prince looked at the huge sakura tree. Flower petals were falling from there. The sight was truly mesmerizing. He took a few petals on the tip of his finger, simply enjoying the beauty of the tree against the backdrop of the same pink leaves. Suddenly, the sounds of a blade were heard behind the guy. Someone was about to attack him, and he already guessed who it was. Finally, the so-called maid made her first move and Lu decided to play with her. However, she said that she was afraid that he might lose his life. But the guy said he didn't care. Even if he washes himself with a flower in his hand, he will be a respected and admirable spirit, and not to mention the fact that this beauty belongs to him. The girl blushed and screamed, saying that it was indecent and called him a lustful womanizer. She pulled out a knife and was about to stab the guy with it. However, she missed her prince, because he had already gone behind the lady's back. After which the girl turned around and wanted to try to pierce her betrothed again. But he disappeared again. Al folded her blade and began to descend from the air to the ground. Yu immediately asked if the young lady was tired. The young man jumped from a high tree branch and brought the girl a small branch of flowers. He said that flowers would suit such a beautiful girl more than a knife. Handing the sakura to the young princess, Lu said that if her highness the princess gets hurt, it will be very bad. She was amazed, asking how he recognized her. However, the prince replied that she herself had just confirmed his words. Illinois narrowed her eyes and said to continue. At first, Lu began to shower her with flattery, but later said that there was one thing that gave away her personality. And of course it was the smell of her body, because usually servants use more expensive perfume than maids. She tried to apply another scent to herself, the scent of a blue butterfly. The two smells mixed and then a strange pear smell came out. Lo couldn't hide it, and Lu thinks she already knew about it, and of course, the princess has already spoken about her personality. The prince came unexpectedly and approved of Prince Lu's words. Illinois Luo was surprised to see her brother and asked why he came. He replied that it was natural because of her. Afterwards he coughed and praised the minister again. Lu Yu paid his respects to His Highness the Prince. Late at night again, the moon shone on the rooftops of the houses, including the spa where Prince Lu was staying. He was lying in a warm and hot bath. Next to him was a basket of rose petals. Rose petals were already floating in the golden water. Hot and choking steam surrounded the boy in large clouds. Princess Miru chuckled, remembering her future husband, who had not even become a spouse yet. If he doesn't hurry up, she will marry someone else. She smiled. A small white bird suddenly took off on the street, creating noise with its wings. Then the bird soared high into the sky, almost straight towards the moon. Meanwhile, Prince Che was doing better. The Duke brought him a message from Du Yi. After reading it, Wang chuckled. This is what the little guy gives. She really does what she wants. What should he do about it? He said that they would go to the imperial capital, otherwise you would turn everything upside down. The prince took Prince Lu out for a walk. He was supposed to be at the residence, but why are they here now? Li Bu is already ready to start preparing for the wedding, so Lu should make some suggestions and tell him. Afterwards, the prince suggested visiting the third brother's residence together. He was reckless, but not bad. Suddenly, a servant ran up to them with a message, saying that it was from the Western Branch. The Western Branch is a secret organization. Even a squad of bloody shadows could not infiltrate there. The prince introduced one of his bodyguards, Pei Yang, to you. He saluted, bowing and showing respect. The girl realized that he was the youngest son of the runaway Pei Chengli. Just as she thought, Prince Lu said that they were brothers from the same family and there was no need for formalities. Ian smiled. There were many rumors about him, and they all turned out to be true. The prince came over and said that in the future the two should hang out together. The prince said that they should visit the third brother's residence together, and immediately Pei began to scream as if in agony. Lu Yu immediately realized that it was a matter of poison and reported it. Nobody knew what to do. The servants ran up to them. Hearing about the poison, the prince screamed, asking the servants if they knew what kind of poison it was. Two responded that they were completely unaware of the matter. Lu asked him to turn his hand over so he could take a look. Yang's hand trembled, but this did not stop Prince Yu. He took some kind of stick and put it to his wrist. Having pierced the skin, not red blood flowed out, but purple and stinking. The minister said that he did not know how to cure it without the help of acupuncture. Afterwards the guy said that he had never seen such a poison, but he could delay its spread for a very short time. The prince ordered the servants to take care of Pei Yan and told Lu to follow him. They all go to the far hall. Yu was glad that they were going straight to the far hall, because this is the Western Branch. Finally they came to the territory closer to the far hall. Everyone greeted the prince. Also, when they approached the entrance, the servants also greeted him many times. Prince Lu looked around the courtyard. All the doors of the third hall are tightly closed. What severity! After these thoughts, a doctor finally came to them and, after examining the guy, said that it was the first time he had seen such poison. The man continued, saying that they would try to stop the spread. Lu looked at it all and was amazed at their pettiness. Now he will see how they will remove his poison. Finally, the branch master burst into the hall, already hysterical and shouting the name of his son. Yu was glad because Pei Chengli appeared before his eyes. He ran to his baby's bed and began shaking the guy, trying to bring him to his senses and ask him about his condition. A slightly frightened doctor approached him from behind, telling him not to worry, because Pei Yang would not die. The prince also joined in, saying that in the fourth hall his son would be helped. Cheng immediately knelt down to show his respect, but was ordered to stand up. As soon as he stood up and saw Lu Yu's face, he screamed as if in recognition. He didn't say her last name out loud, but he thought about her. The man looked at Yu tremblingly, but realized that he was obviously not Miru Lu Yu. Because otherwise the guy wouldn't have such a calm and distant look like this prince. The first prince asked what happened, but Pei just waved him off. He showed respect and apologized, saying that he had confused the young prince with his old friend. He apologizes again because he made a fool of himself. The prince was amazed, because this was quite unusual for the head of the branch. Apparently, he really confused Lu with someone else. Afterwards the guy asked if he had any sisters who were still unmarried. He should discreetly introduce him to them, but he didn't have them. Standing on a cliff in front of the sea with Du Ji, he said that the master of the western branch had indeed brought a surprise. Pei Cheng was in this branch all the time, and except for Hao Zhong's people, no one else managed to go there. The girl asked about some kind of thing. It's located in the western branch, isn't it? Du Yi said that everything is correct, but no one yet knows where they can hide it. The young princess said she understood. It looks like she'll have to visit there. And finally, late at night, the girl went to jump across the rooftops in order to look and find the little thing that she had been looking for so long. Going down and hiding behind a pillar, she examined the area, as if there was no one nearby. Did Pei Cheng really hope to hide the cave by simply blocking its entrance with a pile of huge stones? After that, she saw some small passage among the stones. It's definitely there. Lu Yu made her way, carefully, easily and skillfully moving between the huge cobblestones. This cave was amazing, because as soon as the girl got there, she saw a lot of weapons and documents. However, the most important thing was the box, which was located right in the wall. Could this be the same map of the landscapes of the 3 countries, or is it some kind of trap? The girl approached the box. I'm going to check with the blade of the knife for the presence of traps. Having checked everything from above and on different sides, it turned out that there were no strings or unexpected surprises. She spoke out loud, satisfied that there were no traps. Using a blade, I lifted the lid of the box and it opened without any problems. It contained a black card tied with a red ribbon. Suddenly, the doors to the cave closed even before you turned around. At the same instant, absolutely all things, swords, documents were pushed and hidden under the cobblestones. After which a click was heard in the floor and shurikens fell from there. Fortunately, Princess Muru managed to retreat to the wall. Then arrows appeared in the walls, and wooden gratings formed on the ceiling. The room began to fill with smoke. This smoke turned out to be a poisonous gas, yet Pei Cheng turned out to be not bad. Sniffing, Lu recognized the poison as an intoxicating drug. It was damn dangerous. Such a high concentration of poison can even knock down an elephant. What should she do? The girl began to drift to the side. Her face was sweating from the increase in pressure. She could very soon lose consciousness and fall, but someone broke the entrance to the cave. It is not known what kind of person this was, because everything around the girl was terribly unclear. She was about to fall, but then she was suddenly grabbed by the waist. He took her face in his hand, gently telling her to be careful. The voice seemed painfully familiar. Then the unknown man took the girl and pressed her to him, as if calming her down. He said that it would be better for her to get some sleep. And finally, Lu Yu realized what kind of person he was. She called his name, half asleep, saying that she missed him like hell. He flew out of the building, whispering in her ear that he also missed her very much. The entrance was already completely surrounded by soldiers. One of the soldiers was leading a small group of people and shouting for them to hurry up. Meanwhile, Wang Che had already flown out of the cave with the fragile young Princess Muru Lu in his arms. A small army of 10 soldiers was knocking on Minister Lu Yu's residence. They asked the guy to open it for them. Prince Lu, slightly sleepy, came out, opening the doors to the courtyard. Perplexed, he asked the reason for such a late visit. One warrior replied that the capital was very restless and the western branch had given instructions to protect the general. He told the guy to rest. Afterwards the guy turned around, saying that he understood everything. However, His Highness the Prince suddenly appeared. The soldiers reported to him that the capital had been infiltrated, but His Highness did not have to go. The guy said that he was at the third brother's residence, so he came to look around here too. They won't have any problems with the western branch in the area. Suddenly, huge fireworks were set off, such that even General Lu's porch could be seen. The prince was surprised, because the western branch had not used such signals for a long time. Apparently, someone put a grudge on them. Lu Yu remembered the guy who saved her. Don't tell me that he himself fell into a trap in order to save her. The prince went on to say that it was too early for them to rest. The western branch is ready to catch the culprit, so they have nothing to talk about. The general cried out aloud yes, so to speak, obeying the prince's order, and in his head he was amazed. How did they catch a criminal? The guy narrowed his eyes. What kind of criminal could they have already caught? The prince turned to the general, saying that everything in his residence was completely wrong. There is not a single person in it. The guy wanted to send a couple of men to him tomorrow, but Lu refused, saying that he liked this silence. He headed towards the exit, saying that all this was also not bad. in this case, they will leave everything as it is. Lu Yu narrowed his eyes. This is the little fox, pretending to be sick, although he has a lot of plans. Looks like you've decided to try it out? He doesn't have enough experience for this. After a couple of days, the full moon began to fade. Now only a third of the moon was visible, but it was still beautiful against the backdrop of cherry blossoms. Lu Yu turned around, asking if the guy was ready to die here. He confidently stepped forward, nodding. After which Che smiled and said that he was finally returning. At first the girl screamed, "It's amazing," and then she screamed angrily, asking if this was what he expected. She attacked her betrothed, stretching his cheeks on both sides and screaming that he had been missing for too long. The girl was clearly in an angry mood and began the interrogation, asking the guy if he had a wife on the side or maybe even a child. Yi Wang knelt down covering his face and said that he was wrong and it would never happen again. The girl finally calmed down, saying that he finally understood. Tears began to flow down her cheeks. Lu Yu's face was filled with bitter tears. She was very angry, but most of all upset, because she was very worried about him. "I really missed you." Falling face down into her boyfriend's chest, she cried even harder. He could have at least sent a letter or a small message. She was very worried. Tears also began to gather at the corners of Che's eyes. He listened to this speech with a stone in his heart, and then said that he knew about his maiden's experiences. She burst into tears more than ever, already breaking down. She loves him no less than he loves her. He is not as cold inside as he wants to seem. She knows all that. Breaking away from the hug, Wang Che touched the girl's chin and apologized. They were on an island that was heavily guarded and their every action was monitored. Looking into the eyes of the guy, you asked what happened to his eyes, because they turned from blue to red. He explained that this was all due to the medication, but such changes did not cause huge problems. Afterwards, he asked to give him the opportunity to take a closer look at Lu herself. He touched her cheek, rubbing it softly. His cheeks flushed red. He said that she was unusually beautiful now, like never before. Slightly squeezing the young princess's cheek, the guy continued, saying that she was beautiful to the point that it didn't allow him to breathe. And Yi Wang continued, but their faces were too close. He tried to shorten it even more, completely not saying anything. Now their lips were a millimeter from each other. The couple was afraid to breathe, so as not to scare each other at such a moment. And then Che kissed his princess in a clearing right in front of a blooming peach tree, at the moment when the wind blew and the petals fell on their heads, creating an even more romantic atmosphere. Then their night was filled with too much love, the love that they missed during these 3 years apart. The day came, the peach trees were still blooming, as if they were waiting for Li Yu and Wang Che to meet. They lay in a clearing filled with fallen pink leaves on a large blanket, enjoying the moment. Yi Wang looked at his beautiful maiden, memorizing every curve of her face and every hair on her head. The girl asked how long he planned to look at her and he replied that she generally looked very good. Lu stood up, saying that he was too superficial. She dressed up, saying that she had won this bloody frog and would take care of him when they returned to Tian Chen's country. Che at first did not react to Yu's last words, hugging her around the waist and saying that he did not care whether the young lady was beautiful or not. In this life he loves only her and no one else. Afterwards, Wang asked why she had not yet told about the reason for her appearance in Hozhong. Muru Lu only replied that she would play spy games with them, and in the end she would tear off their arms and legs. The third prince hugged her by the shoulders and said that now they are truly a couple, so they will turn the country of Hozhong upside down. Yu asked if Prince Che had a plan and he replied that soon her man would show something very cool. His Highness the Prince was going to take General Lu somewhere unknown. He offered to show him something very good. As soon as they arrived, they were allowed into a room from which the voices of people could be heard. There were only some clear amounts. Once in, people upped the ante more and more, with great enthusiasm of course. It seems that the minister has already guessed what is happening there. Finally, there was one big bet left and it seems that no one else was willing to make it more than 100,000 liang. The prince explained that these were offers from merchants from all 5 countries, including Tian Chen. This is Wu Cheng's trading room, you can buy good things there. The guy smiled. Now everything fell into place and became more clear than before. Finally the presenter screamed, saying that today's lot would be the very last one for today and it would be an exchange. A man in a black hood opened his box and there was a huge beautiful flower. Lu recognized it as a Buddha flower. Everyone in the hall screamed, recognizing this rare flower. Even Yu's eyes widened slightly. This is very difficult to find, but now the question is, where did he get it from? The presenter introduced and explained the value of a flower, especially one that was in bloom. Lu smiled, and some guy asked what they wanted in exchange for this item. The guy presenting his lot replied that he would like to exchange it for the predatory Rudra fruit. The prince learned the name of the flower and so did the general. This is the name of a type of medicine. A man said that at the moment he had nothing in his hands. He continued, saying that he should be given 10 days, and he would definitely exchange this lot for Rudra's fruit. The guy in the hood almost agreed, but the prince screamed, saying that he wanted to check the quality of the goods. They paid attention to him and he replied that if this is a real Buddha flower, then he will immediately send him the Rudra fruit. The guy who was Che agreed. Prince Hozhong asked Pei Cheng to come and upon entering, he greeted his master. The guy ordered his servant to immediately check this Buddha flower for authenticity. The man, without arguing, immediately went to check, first looking at the so-called seller. Squinting his eyes, he realized that the guy seemed very familiar to him, as if they had seen each other before. Pei looked at the flower. This was his last hope for saving his own son, so he prayed to all the gods. Having carefully examined the Buddha flower, he realized that it was not fake at all and exhaled with relief. Turning to his master, he said that everything was in order and the flower was real. After that, the guy was given the predatory Rudra fruit for testing in a small black box. Opening it, Che saw a fruit that looked like someone's heart. Walking over him with an appraising glance, he replied that everything was in order. At the same moment, someone loudly smashed the ceiling right above that same Buddha flower. A masked ninja flew out of a hole in the ceiling and in a second broke the board in the hands of Pei Cheng, on which he was carrying a flower. Absolutely everyone in the room was amazed at what had just happened. They didn't even think that such an incident could happen. The box, along with the Buddha flower, flew into the air. Pei tried to catch it, but it was all in vain. The prince commanded Lu Yu to immediately grab their flower and it would be better for him to hurry. The guy jumped confidently at that very second, realizing that now everything depended only on him. Meanwhile, the masked fighter was about to steal the box, but Pei Cheng used his internal energy in time, pushing the guy away. Having accelerated and bounced off the post, General Lu approached the box and sent it towards the prince like a tennis ball. He immediately caught the flower. However, it was at that moment that a second fighter was already running towards the guy, about to pierce him with his hand. Fortunately, the minister arrived in time. Che, in his black hood, involuntarily kept his gaze on his beloved. He was undercover, but he couldn't hide his admiration. The prince was amazed and frightened at the same time. There are two killers in the room, black and white. However, he was already safe. He had nothing to fear. Turning to his general Lu Yu, the guy squeezed his shoulder approvingly, saying what a great fellow he was. Pei Cheng also said that Lu was indeed worthy, but he just waved it off, saying that it was his duty. The prince commented on him as a great fighter. He did everything properly. Neither arrogant nor reckless. It was very good to have such an ace up his sleeve. Finally, they arrived in the far hall, where Pei Yang, poisoned with poison, was located. Was still squirming in pain and Pei Cheng didn't understand the reason, because the guy had just eaten a Buddha flower. However, he was told that it seemed to be fake. The man was simply amazed by these words. Who could replace him? The one who exchanged the flower, or maybe that young but very dangerous princess from the country of Tianchen?